Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere deep in time, to a place where the air is thick with incense, candlelight flickers across polished bronze mirrors, and someone's probably grinding up an ingredient that's illegal, toxic or extinct. All in the name of seduction. Yeah, you're about to spend the night with ancient courtesans, and it's not going to be safe. In fact, you probably won't survive this. Most of them didn't. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not you anymore. You're someone else. Someone in a linen tunic with a braided belt and a job that involves knowing how to move without actually seeming to move. Your fingers smell faintly of myrrh, your eyebrows are perfectly shaped, and you've got clients, lots of them, too many probably. Because you're not just anyone, you're a courtesan in ancient Assyria, a few centuries before anything we'd even consider safe medicine exists, and tonight, your top client has sent word he's bringing a guest, an important one. This is not just any night. You glance over at the wine shelf behind the curtain. Only one bottle is marked with a red glyph. The others are for merchants and middle-class bureaucrats. This one, though, this is saffron wine. It glows a little in the lamplight, like it knows what it is. Now you know this stuff is technically banned, but banned in this city-state just means someone got caught selling it to the wrong guy. Saffron wine is for seduction, legendary, sweet, and spiced with a whisper of heat. Saffron itself is already gold-level expensive. It takes thousands of little crocus flowers just to get a pinch of it, and when you steep it in fermented date wine, add crushed cinnamon bark, wild honey, and a pinch of powdered lotus seed. Well, you get something that's been described in cuneiform as the whisper in the ear of Ishtar. That's polite talk for it makes people lose their minds. You pour it carefully into a shallow dish to warm by the brazier. There's something about the way it heats up that makes the scent even stronger. Musky, floral, sharp, a little wrong actually. It doesn't smell like a drink should. It smells like a choice. According to the temple priests, and they would know since many of them are regular customers, this stuff used to be burned as incense for fertility rites. Then someone got the bright idea to drink it. And yeah, it works. A little too well. People have clawed walls over this. Here's a fun detail. Some of the oldest laws about banned aphrodisiacs were written in clay tablets from this exact region, in Akkadian. They mention the wine of saffron which causes agitation in the blood. Agitation. That's adorable. The side effects of this drink include hallucinations, heightened body temperature, and in some cases, spontaneous poetry. You've seen what happens when it's overused. One woman, older, smart, drank it every night for a month. Her skin turned yellow, her tongue swelled, and she started believing she could speak to doves. You're not looking to end up like that. So tonight, you measure it carefully. Just enough to create heat, not madness. As the wine warms, you adhere the room. The pillows are fluffed, the oil lamp trimmed low, the bronze mirror angled to catch the candlelight and reflect a little glow back onto your client's face. All intentional, all planned. And right as the scent of saffron starts to drift into the room, spicy, heady, almost dangerous, you hear the knock. Two men enter, one you know, the other, well, the moment he steps into the room, you know you're dealing with someone dangerous, not violent. Worse, political. The kind of man who asks you questions you're not supposed to know the answers to. The kind who might smile and then report you to the city guards for brewing banned wine. So of course, you smile back and offer him a cup. Let's break this down. Historically, saffron was used for more than food or fabric dye. In ancient Assyria and Persia, it was connected with fertility, divine ecstasy, and erotic rituals. While it was never universally banned, the use of saffron wine by temple courtesans, especially outside sanctioned rituals, was often frowned upon or outright forbidden in certain city-states. But when has frowned upon ever stopped anyone? Especially when it's worth 3 times its weight in silver. Now here's the weird part. Saffron, in high doses, can cause uterine contractions. That made it not only an aphrodisiac, but also an abortifacient, meaning it danced right on the edge of both sex magic and reproductive control, which for a courtesan made it a kind of power potion. That's probably one reason the authorities hated it so much. There's still some debate among historians whether saffron wine was actually consumed for its physical effects, or more as part of the performance, colouring lips, scenting the air, staining teeth gold like royalty. But when you're sitting there, looking into the eyes of a man who knows exactly what he's drinking, and still raises the cup to his lips with a smirk. It's kind of hard to care what modern scholars think. You refill his dish, just a little, and say the line you've been saving all night. May Ishtar find you tonight, more than worthy. You don't have to believe in gods, but you do have to believe in timing. You don't sleep that night, not really. You lie awake on the cool side of the linen pallet, listening to the soft, uneven breaths of the man who drank the most forbidden wine in your collection, and still somehow walked out grinning. Or maybe it was smugness. You're not sure. Either way, you can't stop thinking about the way he looked at you when he left, like he knew something you didn't, or like he'd taken something you weren't offering. Morning light creeps in between the slats of the window screen, and you roll onto your side, still half drunk on saffron vapour and anxiety. There's something in the air that smells like bad news. And you're right. By mid-morning, word has spread that a new ban has been issued. Again. This time the law specifically names all compounds involving lotus, myrrh, or mandragora root in ritual wine preparations used in private dwellings. That's a very specific way of saying you. You mutter a curse and reach for your box of powders and dried herbs, tucked under the floorboards. Time to go lower profile. But it's not easy, because the next request you get is from a nobleman's cousin, someone known for having peculiar tastes and even more peculiar friends. And he's asking for Mandrake. You stare at the clay tablet that carries his message. No greeting, no name, just a wax seal with a lion's paw and the words, root of flame for the night of flame. You've heard worse poetry, but this is playing with fire. Mandrake root has a reputation so old no one even remembers where it began. You pick up a dried sample from your hidden stash. Twisted, gnarled, vaguely human shaped, with little roots like fingers and a top that looks almost like a screaming face. The scream part isn't just aesthetic. According to legend, Mandrake screams when it's pulled from the ground, loud enough to kill anyone who hears it. Of course, you didn't dig it up yourself. You paid a shepherd's daughter to do it. She used a goat. Classic trick. Tie the root to the animal, let it pull it free while you wait behind a rock with your fingers in your ears. Do you believe in the scream? You're not sure, but the girl swore the goat dropped dead after. Still, the root in your hand feels more like power than poison. Here's the deal with Mandrake. It contains alkaloids that affect the nervous system. Scopolamine, hyoscine, things that can sedate, cause hallucinations, or even kill if the dose is wrong. But a tiny amount, soaked in warm wine and mixed with pomegranate juice? That's what makes the body feel like it's floating. That's what makes people brave, or reckless, or both. It was said Roman courtesans, especially those working in the elite houses near the Forum, kept Mandrake hidden in their perfumes. Some would crush the dried root and mix it into salves that they rubbed into their skin, not for beauty, for effect. Anyone who kissed them would taste it, feel it, think they were in love. That's the dangerous thing about Mandrake. It doesn't just change how you feel, it changes what you think you feel. You light a single candle and grind a sliver of root between two smooth stones. The powder smells bitter and earthy, with a ghost of sweetness, like old apple skins or dried figs. You drop it into a small cup of date wine and stir. Tonight you'll be careful. 1 drop of this and a man can dance through fire. 2, and he might start seeing snakes in his own shadow. 3, and you're cleaning up a corpse before sunrise. Historically, Mandrake root was used in rituals, medicine, and fertility spells across the Mediterranean. The Greeks called it cerkeia and associated it with love goddesses. In ancient Rome, it was sometimes given to new brides in tiny doses, symbolic supposedly. But some whispered that certain women used it to tame men, soften them, turn their minds to mush before negotiations. One Roman general supposedly outlawed its use among all women in his province after waking up married to a courtesan he'd only met the night before. Is it true? No one knows, but the ban happened. The fringe fact? Some early Roman physicians believed Mandrake grew only beneath gallows, where the body fluids of executed men had soaked into the earth. That gave the root its human shape, and its magic. Charming thought, right? But the real mystery is whether it worked at all. Some scholars today think the whole aphrodisiac effect was placebo, belief-powered. Others say the alkaloids did have psychotropic effects, especially combined with alcohol, and that love was just a convenient side effect. Then there's the third camp, those who think it worked because it terrified people. Think about it. You're drinking something possibly cursed, illegal, and grown in death-soaked soil. That does something to the psyche. Back in your room, the noble cousin arrives exactly on time, wearing a robe that smells like imported sandalwood and quiet ambition. You offer him the drink in a shallow bowl. One sip and he closes his eyes. You wait. Was it harvested under the right conditions? He asks without opening them. You nod. Was it done? Properly? You want to say, I watched a goat drop dead, does that count? But instead you just smile and say, nothing screams louder. He smiles and drinks the rest. You dim the lamps a little more, not because he asked, but because you know what's coming. By the end of the night, he'll swear he's fallen in love, and you'll pretend to believe him, because tomorrow he won't remember anything but the feeling. The next morning you open your shutters just wide enough to let in a breeze, and not a bit more. There's a thin layer of dust on the windowsill, fine as flour, the kind that drifts in when the city is holding its breath. The cousin of a nobleman is gone. No note, no payment yet either, but you're not worried. Men like him always pay, eventually. It's their reputation they're buying, not just your company, and they can't afford to lose either. But as you breathe in that dusty air, your thoughts drift to a name you haven't heard in a long time. Cantharidin, also known as Spanish fly. The name is misleading, has nothing to do with Spain, and it definitely doesn't fly. It comes from a beetle, a shiny, iridescent little thing called Litta vesicatoria. Bright green and about as dangerous as anything you can fit under a fingernail. You remember the first time you saw it. You were still apprenticing, helping your mentor clean out old glass vials and dust-dry herb sachets. One tiny jar sat apart from the others, sealed with a wax, marked only with a red X. When you asked about it, your mentor didn't answer. She just handed you a long metal glove and told you to clean everything except that. Naturally, you opened it the moment she left the room. Inside were fragments of a beetle, green shell casings, brittle little wings, and the faintest scent of something acrid, burnt almonds and vinegar. Your eyes watered instantly. That was Cantharidin. It's not even a plant. It's a chemical produced by the beetle's body to ward off predators, and it does a stunningly effective job at it. When ingested, it causes blood to rush to the pelvic region, not because it stimulates desire, but because it's an irritant. It inflames the bladder and surrounding tissue. In small doses, people took that as a sign of arousal. In slightly larger ones, pain, bleeding, organ damage, and yes, death. You know this too well. The archives of Roman and Islamic physicians are filled with notes about it. Stimulates the flesh, they said. Quickens desire. But also, do not overuse, has killed emperors. A few even wrote detailed warnings about how easily it could be slipped into wine, mistaken for saffron or turmeric powder. Still, it was popular, stunningly so. Roman courtesans used it with extreme care, if they used it at all. They didn't drink it themselves, of course. They painted it onto sweets with tiny brushes, wrapped it in fig leaves, baked it into honey cakes, always in minuscule amounts, calculated by experience and risk. Never 2 nights in a row. Never on someone with a cough or bad complexion, but even then things went wrong. No, he told up ouching. You heard of one infamous case in Alexandria, where a high-born woman, a courtesan of some prestige, served a senator 3 bites of candied date laced with powdered beetle shell. The man collapsed before finishing the 4th. His family claimed poison. She claimed love potion. The city governor called it an unfortunate misunderstanding and banned both date sweets and Cantharidin for personal use within a week. The ban didn't stop anyone, obviously. Courtesans simply got smarter. You learned to crush it finer. You learnt the difference between a pinch that sparks a flush and a pinch that ends with a funeral, but you also learnt that you don't touch it unless you have a death wish, or the client requests it specifically, which unfortunately someone just has. You unfold the message that came in with the morning bread delivery. Scrawled in ink the colour of dried blood are the words, "I hear your honey stings." No name, no address, but you know the delivery boy, and you know who he works for. It's a request. The client in question is not unknown to you. Older, heavy-set, rich in the way that makes men greedy, and lonely in the way that makes them reckless. He's always flirted with danger. Last time, it was a rare incense made from crushed pearls and deer musk. This time, he wants something stronger. You consider your options. You still have the vial, sealed and stashed in a hidden drawer behind the wooden bust of Ishtar on your altar. Just 1 gram of powder left, maybe less. You touch the edge of the vial with a linen-wrapped hand. Even the idea of contact makes your skin crawl. That night you prepare carefully. The client arrives late, draped in layers of silk doused in so much cologne it makes your nose sting. He brings wine, of course, sweet-scented, expensive, the kind that tastes more like syrup than alcohol. Perfect for hiding things. You serve him a slice of melon first, then a bite of almond cake. Finally, the special dish. Honey-soaked figs arranged on a silver plate with one, only one, painted with a dusting of the secret powder. He chooses it without hesitation. You watch his pupils shift, his cheeks redden. He starts sweating, not a lot, but enough to notice. His breathing becomes shallow. He doesn't say much, just watches you, like he's waiting for something more. You offer a dance, but he declines. You pour more wine. He nods. After a few moments, he stands, just stands there, looking at you. Then he says something you've never heard from him before. Thank you. That was enough. And he leaves. No gold on the table, no goodbye, just silence. You clean up slowly, nervously, not because you did anything wrong, but because you did everything right. That's the thing with Cantharidin. When it works, it's subtle. It leaves you unsure if anything happened at all. And when it doesn't, well, you never see that client again. Historically, Cantharidin was banned in various periods, especially during the Roman Empire and later in Islamic medicine. Yet it kept resurfacing, passed in secret among courtesans and herbalists. Even modern toxicologists acknowledge its strange status as both a blistering agent and a supposed aphrodisiac. The open debate even today is this: did it ever truly arouse? Or was the entire phenomenon a misreading of pain as passion, inflammation as intimacy? As you sit in the soft candlelight watching the flame flicker over the empty fig plate, you don't care about the science. You just care that you lived through it, again. You start the next evening with a headache blooming just behind your right eye, the kind that arrives like a warning. You haven't even opened the shutters yet, yeah, and already you feel it. The tension in the air. The press of whispers sliding through the corridors. Someone is asking questions. You hear it in the way the bread seller hesitates before speaking. In the way your neighbours are suddenly interested in what you're burning in your censer. In the way the guards outside the bathhouse look a little too long at your face. This is what happens when you work with Cantharidin. Even once, the scent of danger clings to you. You need to lay low, quiet, subtle, which means no wine, no strange powders, and definitely no beetle dust. So tonight, you reach for something different, something safer, or at least something that smells safer. Ambergris, yes. Whale vomit, and yes, that's exactly what it is. Technically, it's not vomit, it's hardened digestive material excreted by sperm whales, usually after a particularly intense squid meal. But whale bile doesn't sound any more appealing, and honestly, floating treasure of the sea is a marketing stretch at best. You know better. It's foul, it's expensive, and for reasons no one quite understands, it's intoxicating. You take a chunk from your apothecary drawer, it's wrapped in linen and sealed in wax to trap the smell. Once unwrapped, it releases a scent like nothing else, marine, musky, slightly sweet with the unmistakable undertone of rot. It shouldn't be alluring, it shouldn't, and yet it is. Historically, ambergris has been used in perfumes, aphrodisiacs, and even food. It was considered a royal delicacy in Venice during the Renaissance, where courtesans working the highest tiers of society, those who entertained senators, artists, and foreign kings, would scent their hair with it, just a little, blended with rose oil or sandalwood, enough to make a man lean in and not quite know why. You grind it with a mortar, adding a pinch of crushed clove, a drop of aged rose oil, and a few grains of salt. This blend, heated over a slow flame, will scent the room for hours. You don't apply it to yourself, not yet. First, you let the room breathe it in, let the cushions, the walls, the air itself turn into something just slightly forbidden. There's no law against using ambergris, not officially. But in Venice during the mid-1500s, when the sumptuary laws started creeping into even the private quarters of elite women, ambergris was quietly discouraged. Anything that gave a courtesan an unfair advantage was suspect. Scent in particular became political. Too much perfume, and you could be accused of manipulation. Too good a perfume, and you might be charged with witchcraft. Of course, that didn't stop anyone. Especially not the women at the top. You weren't just a plaything or a distraction, you were a performer, a strategist, an artisan of desire. And if that meant scenting your hair with a substance dredged from the intestines of a dead whale, so be it. You're pulled from your reverie by the creak of the door. He's early. Typical. Tonight's client is not a regulars. But you've seen his type before. Tall, rigid posture, immaculate clothing, a face so smooth it could be lacquered. He's brought a gift, a small vial of Venetian glass filled with honeyed wine, and a question in his eyes. He doesn't speak at first, just walks the perimeter of the room, breathing deeply. "You've changed something," he says finally. You nod. "Smells like sin," he adds, and you can't help but laugh. "That's the idea," you say. He doesn't drink the wine he brought. He barely touches anything, just sits and watches you as if trying to understand why the room feels so charged, so thick. He starts to sweat, adjusts his collar, clears his throat. It's working. The trick with ambergris isn't direct intoxication, it's atmosphere. A shift in perception. It's not something you ingest or apply for immediate reaction. It's something that lingers, gets in the folds of fabric, the edges of skin, the memory, days from now. He'll catch the scent on someone else's scarf and feel something he can't explain. That's the real magic. Now here's the fringe fact. Some ambergris was so rare and high quality that it was worth more than gold by weight. Royals kept it locked away in ornate boxes. Pirates fought over it. And in one bizarre case, a dying English nobleman requested that it be used to scent his coffin so his mistress would remember him with longing, not rot. Charming. There's a lot of debate, even now, about how ambergris actually works. Is it pheromonal? Psychosomatic? Does it interact with human chemistry at all? Or is it just one more strange case of olfactory manipulation? Scholars go back and forth, but the consensus is it does something, especially when paired with intimacy, candlelight, and a skilled hand. Your client finally speaks again. "This reminds me of something," he says, eyes half-lidded, "but I can't place it." You nod. "Good. That means it's working." He leans closer, not for a kiss, not yet, just to inhale. You let him. By the time he leaves, he looks disoriented, like he's stepped out of a dream. He leaves behind a purse of coins and his untouched wine. Doesn't even say goodbye, just a long, lingering look at the doorframe before he disappears down the stairs. You wait, breathe, then start airing out the room. You can't use ambergris again tomorrow. It's a one-night kind of magic. Any more than that and people start asking what you're hiding. So you wrap the remaining lump back in its linen cloth, seal it in wax, and slide it beneath the loose tile in the floor. It might be a month before you use it again, but when you do, it'll be like lighting a memory on fire. You're running low on Silphium. That's the first thing you notice when you open the bottom drawer of your supply chest and find only a single dried stalk wrapped in faded parchment. You stare at it like it might grow more if you squint hard enough. But no, what's left is barely a finger's length. Cracked, brittle, and lined with gold veins where the sap once pulsed. You hold it to your nose and for a moment there it is again. That scent. Strange, spicy, sharp, like fennel and myrrh had an argument and neither won. You're not supposed to have this. No one is. Because officially Silphium is extinct. You glance over your shoulder even though your door is shut. Your shutter's bolted. The stalk in your hand is worth more than anything else in this room, more than your mirror, more than the little onyx pendant tucked under your mattress, more than you some days, and yet here you are, about to grind it up and serve it in tea like it's just another Thursday. Silphium was once so prized, entire economies rose and fell around it. The ancient city of Cyrene, where it grew and nowhere else, stamped its coins with its image, a heart-shaped seed pod nestled between twin sun stalks. It was traded by weight, locked into temple vaults, given as tribute to kings, and then, just like that, it was gone. Harvested to extinction, or so they say. That's the official version anyway. But courtesans, you know better. You know someone. Who knows someone? Who gets it from the Black Coast, where a strain still grows, wild and bitter among the rocks. Not quite the original, but close, enough to make the blood warm, enough to open the mind, enough to unfold someone. You break the brittle stalk into pieces and drop it into a clay pot of steeping anise tea. The scent that rises is unmistakable. Ancient, earthy, slightly medicinal. You add a dried fig, both for sweetness and because the symbolism is not lost on you. Tonight's client is young, new to this world, nervous, rich of course, but still fragile in that way men are when they've never paid for what they truly want. He arrives in silence, led in by his tutor, who mutters something about broadening horizons and cultural education. You almost laugh. Instead, you offer him the tea. He takes it with trembling hands. You watch him sip. Wait. Breathe. Silphium doesn't act fast. It builds, gently but persistently. First the warmth spreading from the chest down through the stomach, like he's swallowed candlelight. Then the soft, floaty vertigo, the kind that makes pillows feel like clouds and skin feel like prophecy. You speak softly, low and rhythmic, guiding him, not into anything dramatic, but into presence. Into himself. That's what Silphium was always about. It wasn't just for a passion. It was balance. It was control. It was escape. Here's what's strange. Despite its value, despite its fame, Silphium was used as both an aphrodisiac and a contraceptive. The ancient texts contradict themselves. Some claim it heightened fertility. Others swear it prevented it. There are drawings of it being gifted to lovers, and others showing it offered during temple rites for safe passage away from pregnancy. It was everything and nothing, miracle and myth. The real story, no one knows. Modern scholars argue endlessly about what Silphium actually was. Some say it was a relative of Asafoetida. Others think it was a form of giant fennel or a rare ferula species. Some even claim it was engineered, deliberately crossbred in secrecy and lost when Cyrene fell. But the most persistent theory is that it was sacred, and its extinction was no accident. Too much power in the wrong hands, too many women controlling their own bodies, too many men waking up the next morning still haunted by the taste. You see it in your client now, that flicker of something deeper behind his eyes, not just arousal, awareness. He's not touching you, not speaking, just galloping like he's trying to memorize your face, not with lust but reverence. It's almost uncomfortable. He finishes the tea and whispers something you don't quite catch. You don't ask him to repeat it. Some words aren't meant to be heard twice. When he leaves, he bows. That never happens. You clean the cup with hands that shake slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. You've seen this before. A man drinks Silphium, and something in him opens, and not all openings can be closed again. You return to the supply chest. Only a few flecks of Silphium dust remain in the paper. You fold it carefully. You'll keep it. You always keep the scraps, because the next time someone comes in asking, quiet voice, nervous hands, that haunted look, you'll want to remember exactly how it felt to serve a plant the world swears is gone, and know, with quiet satisfaction, that they were wrong. You're having one of those afternoons where the air tastes like rain, but the sky refuses to break. Heavy, wet, electric, like something's about to happen. You sit cross-legged near the brazier, fingers stained with dried rose oil, your pestle moving in slow circles through a bowl of crushed herbs. The mixture is for incense, something mild, pleasant, nothing dramatic. Until the knock comes. 3 taps. Pause. 2 more. Not your usual rhythm. Not anyone's usual rhythm. You rise, wrap your robe tight and open the door to a boy no older than 14. Barefoot. Hair shaved at the sides in the Aztec fashion. He doesn't speak. Just hands you a tiny leather pouch and slips away down the alley without turning back. You close the door. Lock it. The pouch smells of smoke and flowers, of dust and secrets. You spill it out onto your palm and there it is, a tight bundle of dried leaves tied with a red cord. You haven't seen this in years. Damiana. It always comes from the south, and it never comes with instructions. If someone sends it to you, they don't want a flirtation. They want transcendence, or at least the illusion of it. You unfold the leaves carefully and crumble them between your fingers. They're golden green, brittle, light as feathers. The scent is unmistakable, earthy with a whisper of mint and something rounder, deeper, almost like hay left in the sun too long. You fill a shallow pipe with it, set a small coal to smouldering in the bowl, and wait for the first thin tendrils of smoke to spiral up. It curls through the air like fingers reaching. Damiana's not banned here. Not technically. But in certain markets, especially the ones held under moonlight in the old parts of the city, it's quietly restricted. Too many stories, too many men wandering off into the jungle claiming they heard gods whispering their names. Too many women found sitting in fountains at sunrise laughing, soaked, alone, saying they'd fallen in love with the moon. You tried it once, years ago, alone, in a temple garden, barefoot, heartbeat slow, the sky opened, the stars came down, and for 20 minutes you understood what it meant to belong to your own body. You haven't touched it since, until now. Historically, Damiana was used by the indigenous peoples of Central and South America. particularly among the Maya and Aztecs, as both an aphrodisiac and a tonic. They didn't separate the two. Health and desire, mind and body, they were the same. Damiana was mixed into tea, burned in ceremonial fire pits, even blended with cacao to create sacred drinks for rituals, and less sacred drinks for pleasure. You begin preparing a brew, just in case. A few crumbled leaves in hot water, sweetened with agave and stirred with a stick of cinnamon bark. The scent alone is enough to soften your chest. You set the tea aside, you're not drinking it. Not tonight. Because tonight, your client is. He arrives exactly as the sun begins to slip behind the buildings, turning the sky that molten peach colour that makes everything look like a painting. He's cloaked, quiet, smells of sweat and sandalwood. A labourer, maybe, or a soldier, or someone pretending to be one. His hands are clean, too clean, his nails too short. You've seen that before, men who keep their hands clean to hide what they've done with them. You offer him the pipe, but he shakes his head. Too much ceremony. He wants the tea. He drinks deeply, like he's trying to prove he isn't nervous. Then he sets the cup down, leans back, and closes his eyes. You say nothing, just watch. Within minutes, the flush creeps up his neck. His shoulders loosen, his knees part slightly, his breath deepens. He's not drunk, not drugged, not hypnotized, but something has been unlocked. He opens his eyes and looks at you like you're made of music. Then he starts to talk. Not about sex, not even about desire, but about himself. His mother's cooking, the way his village used to smell during rain, a dog he lost as a boy, the first time he was told he wasn't allowed to cry. He speaks and speaks and speaks, and you listen. This is what Damiana does. It doesn't make people lustful. Not really. It makes them vulnerable, honest. It softens the armour, makes space. That's what makes it dangerous, and why it's been quietly pushed to the edges of acceptability. You've read old merchant logs where European sailors described Aztec pleasure smoke as both divine and destructive. They tried to ban it, then predictably hoarded it for themselves, smuggled in under crates of cacao hidden in sacks of grain. One Spanish bishop reportedly lost his position after being caught smoking Damiana in the cathedral garden with a local girl who claimed she was teaching him about God. There's still debate today about its effects. Some say it has no aphrodisiac properties at all, that any reaction is placebo or cultural. Others point to studies on mood enhancement and blood flow. A few radical voices insist it opens spiritual channels, something between a stimulant and a heartwarming hallucinogen. You don't care what the scientists say. You've seen it work, and tonight you see it again. Your client doesn't try to touch you, doesn't even flirt, just sits with the warmth glowing through him like an ember under silk. He cries once, briefly. You pretend not to notice, and when he leaves he bows his head. Not like a customer, like a student. You gather the leftover leaves and return them to the pouch. You tie it closed with the same red cord and tuck it into your belt. You won't sell the rest. You won't smoke it again, not unless someone truly needs it. Because this isn't just a tool, it's a key. And you only hand out keys to those who are ready to walk through the door. The palace air tastes like metal. It always does. You hate it, actually. How it sticks to the back of your tongue. How even the silk cushions smell faintly of bronze, blood, and polished ambition. Still, you're here. You're not exactly invited, but you've been summoned, which is the same thing. Only more dangerous. You pass under arched ceilings where alchemical symbols are carved into the stone, pretending you don't notice the silent scribes pressed into alcoves with their long scrolls and ink-stained fingers. You've been called to the bedchamber of a court advisor, not a king, not quite, but close enough that people tend to whisper his name only when they're sure he's out of earshot. They say he's dying. They also say he's immortal. They say a lot of things. When you enter the room, he's seated upright, skin pale as rice paper, with a long purple robe bunched around him like wilted petals. He doesn't look like he's dying. But his eyes flick toward you with a sharpness that makes you wish he was. "Do you know of the 9 turns elixir?" he asks, voice like parchment curling in flame. You nod once. That's not the kind of question you answer out loud. He gestures to the lacquer box beside him. Inside, cradled in a nest of silver thread, is a small bottle, ceramic with a golden dragon etched into its side. You've never seen one in person. You've only heard stories from wandering spice traders and exiled concubines with eyes like knives. The 9 turns elixir. Alchemical. Mysterious. Banned in most parts of Imperial China by the early dynasties. Said to be a potent blend of cinnabar, ginseng, mercury, ground pearl, and essence of flame, whatever that means. The recipe shifted depending on the alchemist, but the goal was always the same: vitality, eternal youth, and, yes, pleasure. But pleasure with a cost. Always a cost. You've heard of one empress who demanded it daily, even as her teeth began to loosen, and her hair thinned to a silvery wisp. Of eunuchs who begged to be dismissed rather than serve in the chambers where the elixir was burned. Of an entire wing of a summer palace sealed off after the emperor's favourite concubine was found singing naked to a pile of ashes that used to be her reflection. The elixir is legendary, not just for what it does, but for how it feels, and now it's in front of you. Administer it, the advisor says. You raise an eyebrow. To me, he adds, smiling slightly, and then, if you wish, to yourself. The bottle is warm. That's the first surprise. Not heated, but warm on its own, as if it remembers fire. You uncork it. A thick, shimmering liquid clings to the mouth. It smells like cinnamon bark and sulphur. Crushed flowers and something faintly metallic, like licking a coin. You pour a single drop onto your fingertip. Oh. The sensation is immediate. Not pain, not pleasure, just awareness. As if every cell in your body has suddenly remembered what it's supposed to be doing. Your spine straightens, your breath deepens, your eyes feel clearer, brighter. You glance at him. He nods. You press a drop to his lips. He swallows. The effect on him is less subtle. His chest rises. His fingers twitch. His eyes widen, with an almost boyish glint of mischief and surprise. I haven't felt... he begins, then stops. No need to finish. The room begins to shift, not physically, but perceptually. The colours grow more saturated. Shadows stretch and curl like they're listening. The dragon etched into the bottle seems to blink. You know you're not hallucinating exactly. It's something else. Your heartbeat is slow, heavy, rhythmic. This isn't like saffron or mandrake. This isn't rooted in plant or animal. This is alchemical, the kind of thing born in furnaces and perfected over lifetimes. It was never meant to be used by ordinary people, which is probably why courtesans always found a way to get their hands on it. The elixir was popular for a time in the Tang and Song dynasties, used in underground brothels and among the elite. But it wasn't shared openly. Most who used it did so in secret, risking arrest or exile. Some recipes used it in mercury, which was believed to preserve youth. They weren't wrong technically, mercury does have antibacterial properties, but it also corrodes the brain. Some scholars today argue that the more refined versions didn't use mercury at all, but rather a stabilized compound known only to the old Taoist masters. Others believe it was all myth, an elaborate placebo delivered in golden bottles to those rich enough to believe anything. The fringe theory? That the elixir wasn't meant for pleasure at all, but for ritual possession. That those who drank it became vessels for ancestral spirits, gods, or worse. It would explain the sudden personality shifts, the bouts of euphoria, the dreams. You've had enough for one night. You cork the bottle, wipe your hands, and set it gently back into its velvet cradle. The advisor is still sitting upright, eyes wide, face slack with awe. It will last an hour, you say, voice soft. Is that all? He murmurs, like a man who just realized he's mortal. You nod, gather your things, and leave. You never see him again. Rumour says he was found 2 days later. Still smiling, still warm, no signs of struggle, no explanation. The palace declared it natural causes, but you know better. As for the elixir, it vanishes with him. No one asks you about it, no one dares, but sometimes, late at night, you feel that warmth again in your fingertips, just for a moment, like the bottle remembers you, like it's waiting. The rain finally comes 2 nights later, not in soft cleansing sheets, but in a hard metallic crash that turns the alleyways into black rivers and washes the scent of smoke and wine off the stones. You sit by your mirror, combing oil into your hair by lamplight, watching the world melt behind you in the glass. A single candle flickers, guttering in the breeze, and you think, maybe tonight will be quiet. It won't. The knock is soft this time, 3 gentle taps, like a secret wrapped in silk. You open the door to a figure cloaked in velvet, their face mostly hidden except for the faint shimmer of pearl powder on their cheeks and a flash of violet kohl around the eyes. You recognize the look immediately. Parisian courtesan, 17th century, theatre-trained, perfume-drenched, and so fluent in artifice it's practically a second language. She steps inside without a word. slipping off the cloak to reveal a dress that could buy an entire vineyard and maybe a small duchy. Underneath that elegance, though, you see something else. Desperation, yes, but also determination. She carries a glass vial in one hand, and when she sets it on your table, you see the label, Belladonna. Oh, hell. You stare at it, and for a moment, you feel like time has just folded in on itself. Belladonna, deadly nightshade, has a reputation soaked in blood and perfume, used for centuries in tiny, terrifying doses to dilate pupils, flush cheeks, and, in some cases, end lives. But courtesans knew how to walk that line. They danced on it. You gesture toward a cushion. She sits, uncorks the bottle. The scent is faint, green, bitter, slightly floral. You can smell the danger in being lit. She smiles. They've started inspecting perfumes, she says softly, in French. So I need something a little less obvious. You understand immediately. No more Belladonna in the spritz bottles. No more eye drops. Not in Paris, anyway. The ban is fresh. Whispers say a bishop's niece went blind after overusing it. Whether it's true or convenient, who knows? The result is the same. Possession punishable by exile, or worse. But this client isn't just trying to keep her edge, she's trying to disappear. You can see it in her face. And the only way to vanish for someone like her is through transformation. She doesn't want to be who she is anymore. She wants to become a fantasy. So you get to work. Belladonna works by blocking acetylcholine receptors, essentially dulling the body's natural warning systems. It dilates the pupils, making eyes look wide, wet, inviting, and increases the heart rate, causes a subtle flush, even creates a dreamy, detached expression. Pain becomes pleasure. Hunger becomes longing. It was once called the herb of witches, and for good reason, but it's dangerous. The dose between beauty and death is slim, and even skilled courtesans have misjudged it. Still, in Renaissance and Baroque Europe, it was considered essential, especially in elite salons, where half the game was being more vivid than the woman next to you. You take her vial, pour a single drop into a blend of bergamot and sandalwood oil, and swirl it. The scent changes instantly, less sharp, more velvety. When applied to the skin, it won't cause blindness or vomiting, but it will make someone lean in closer. It will cloud judgment. It will whisper, "She's not like anyone else you've ever met." You dab it on her wrists, just a little. Then, after a moment's hesitation, just under her jawline, she closes her eyes, breathing deeper now. You can tell it's working, not because she looks different, though she does, but because she feels different, more dangerous, more mythical. "Merci," she says softly. "You've saved me." You don't ask what from. Here's the fringe story. Belladonna was once believed to be the favourite plant of Roman gods of the underworld. Witches were said to anoint themselves with it, mixed into flying ointments that let them leave their bodies. Whether it was flight or just a potent hallucination is still up for debate, but what's not debated is its legacy. Even today, scholars disagree about whether Belladonna was used primarily for its cosmetic effects or for something darker. Control, submission, confusion. Some claim its erotic reputation was just a side effect of wide pupils and flushed skin. Others believe it was intentionally weaponized by courtesans to weaken defenses, making clients more susceptible to suggestion or regret. You've seen both, and now you're watching it again. As the Parisian woman rises, her scent wafts through the room like a ghost in velvet. Her eyes catch the candlelight and reflect it like wet glass. She doesn't look like someone with secrets anymore. She looks like the secret itself. She presses a small silver coin into your palm, engraved with the fleur-de-lis. Then she slips out the door into the rain without another word, leaving behind only the faintest shimmer of powder on your chair. You turn back to the vial, still half full, and cork it tightly. You'll keep it. Not for sale, not for trade, just in case. Because some nights, what a courtesan needs isn't just allure or comfort or laughter. Sometimes what she needs most is to be unknowable. There's something ceremonial about preparing honey balls, especially the forbidden kind. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat, fingertips sticky, knees dusted with powdered cinnamon and crushed flower petals. The beeswax is melting in the bowl beside you, warm and fragrant, and you stir it slowly, the way your grandmother taught you, clockwise, always clockwise. Tonight's not about seduction in the usual sense. It's not about illusion or alchemical tricks. Tonight is about indulgence, opulence, and maybe a little danger, just enough to make it interesting. You're making hashish honey balls, a Middle Eastern delicacy that's far older and far more dangerous than it looks. The texture is soft and pliable, a mixture of clarified butter, dark wild flower honey, chopped dates, rose petals, cardamom, and just a pinch of finely ground hashish. Not enough to make someone collapse, but more than enough to make their thoughts bend and ripple like silk in water. These were never meant for the average guest. They were used by harem courtesans, the ones who didn't just entertain but intoxicated. The ones who were legends behind silk screens, whose laughter turned into poetry, whose names were carved into lamps and whispered in marketplaces long after they'd vanished. You roll the mixture into perfect spheres, each one smaller than a walnut. Each one wrapped in dried lotus petals and tied with a thread of saffron. They look like little jewels. Dangerous, glittering, edible jewels. Your client tonight is known for lavish tastes. A man with too many rings on his fingers and not enough warmth in his voice. A collector of women and words. He pays not for bodies, but for experiences. You're not even sure he knows the difference. When he arrives, he takes in the scent of the room, smoke, honey, rose, and spice. And his lips curl with something like approval. He sits without speaking, waits. This is the part he enjoys, watching. So you perform, you unroll a silk cloth on the tray, place the honey balls in a neat crescent, and pour hot tea from a tall silver pot, the steam curling like a veil. Then you pick one, just one, and place it on his tongue with your fingers. His lips close around it. He doesn't chew, just lets it melt. Good. Hashish doesn't work like alcohol. It takes time. It's slow, creeping, a velvet rope pulling the mind inward. Within 15 minutes he starts to speak. Nothing coherent at first, just the rhythmic sound of his own voice, little loops of memory and half-thought. You watch the tension in his shoulders melt. He smiles at nothing, then everything. You've seen this before, the bliss stage. The body hums, the eyes dilate, and the heart opens in strange, unexpected directions. He leans forward, not to touch you, but to confess. That's the real power of these sweets. Not lust, not heat, but honesty. He tells you a dream he had as a boy, about being lost in a garden filled with glass birds. He describes the way his mother used to hum when she sewed. He admits quietly that he's never loved anyone who loved him back. You say nothing, just pour more tea. Historically, hashish was deeply tied to mysticism in the Islamic Golden Age. It was both medicine and menace, smoked, eaten, infused in oils. Courtesans in cities like Baghdad, Damascus and Cairo were known to blend it into honey confections that blurred the lines between ritual and pleasure. There are records of entire salons built around the consumption of these delicacies, often hidden from the public eye, where musicians played until dawn and lovers kissed without names. But not everyone approved. By the 13th century, the use of hashish was banned by various rulers, especially when associated with women and pleasure. Religious scholars declared it sinful. Edicts were issued. Some women were flogged or exiled. Others simply went deeper underground, taking their secrets and their recipes with them. The fringe fact? Some believe that hashish connected the body to the divine, that in the right dose it allowed communication with spirits, angels, even the jinn. In some harem lore, courtesans were said to use these honey balls not just to delight, but to guide, to walk their clients through visions, through healing, through grief. And tonight, as you watch your client dissolve into soft laughter, his head lolling against the cushions, you wonder if that's what you're doing now. Not seducing, not performing, but midwifing some quiet transformation. He'll wake tomorrow with no clear memory of what he said, only the soft ache of having felt something that mattered. You clean up in silence, wrap the remaining honey balls in wax paper and tuck them back into your cedar box. You'll only use them again when someone truly needs to forget themselves, or remember something they've been avoiding for years. He stirs slightly, still dreamy, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you call them?" he asks. You smile. "Dreams, sticky ones." He chuckles softly, and you know he won't remember that either. But it's fine. Not everything beautiful needs to be remembered. Not every pleasure needs to leave a mark. Damins are meant to vanish, like sugar on the tongue. You've just finished oiling your sandals when the girl from the herbalist's shop taps twice on your doorframe and slips a parcel through the crack before vanishing into the fog. She doesn't wait. She never does. Her errands come without conversation, and the messages she delivers speak for themselves. Folded fabric, wax seals, coded knots. You lift the parcel from the floor. It's warm, a little soft, and smells faintly of salt and crushed tomato leaves. Inside, 3 overripe tomatoes wrapped in linen. Redder than they should be. Juicy, swollen, bursting. You blink, then laugh, because of course. Tonight's indulgence is the most ridiculous and most dangerous of all the love apple. You hold one up to the light. It gleams like lacquer, as if it's been painted rather than grown. The stem is twisted like a serpent's tongue. If you didn't know better, you might think this was just dinner. But you know far better, because this isn't just a tomato. It's an old-world aphrodisiac draped in centuries of superstition, scandal, and Vatican disapproval. The name says it all. Pomme d'amour, apple of love, or, if you're feeling more ominous, mala insana, mad apple. You set them in a shallow dish and stare at them for a while. They practically glow against the clay. In Renaissance Italy, especially among the courtesans of Venice and Florence, these bright red fruits were not considered food. Not at first. They were dangerous, exotic, rumoured to cause madness, lust or death, depending on who was doing the talking. The church whispered about poison. Physicians blamed them for fevers and hallucinations, but the women, the clever ones, learned how to use that fear. You remember one story clearly, a Venetian courtesan named Isabetta who used tomatoes in ways that bordered on performance art. She'd slice them slowly in front of clients, never eating them, just letting the juices run down her fingers, staining the air with that sharp, earthy smell. She'd press them to her lips and say, "It tastes like sin." Men paid her to watch. They thought they were watching her eat poison, and they liked it. There's something about the tomato that's theatrical. It smells green and alive. Its skin is soft, but if you press too hard it bursts, messy, intimate, unapologetic. You wash them gently, slice one open, and the juice runs thick down your fingers, almost like blood. You bring it to your lips, salty, tart, slightly metallic. It tastes forbidden. Noita's guest is an artist, or at least someone who thinks he is. He paints beautiful women who look like they're just about to lie to you. You've posed for him once years ago when you still thought it might lead to something more than a dusty portrait hung in a cold villa. He's back now, asking for something inspiring. You know what that means. He wants theatre, mystery, maybe a little danger. Not the kind that involves knives or bruises, but the kind that lives in the space between a kiss and a bite. So you give him the tomato. No candlelight tonight. Just moonlight. You sit by the open window, breeze curling around you, and offer him a shallow bowl of tomato slices dressed in honey, fig vinegar, and crushed peppercorns. Sweet and sharp. He hesitates, then takes a bite. He moans, not dramatically, just a soft, surprise sound, like something in him just shifted. You watch him eat another, and another, each one slower, more deliberate. He starts to sweat. His cheeks flush. He stares at you like you're a puzzle he forgot he was supposed to solve. That's what makes tomatoes so effective. It's not chemicals, it's myth. They were banned in some regions not because they caused lust, but because they symbolised it so clearly. Blood red, plump, juicy, the forbidden fruit of a new world, tied to witchcraft, seduction, and colonial fear. European botanists once believed they were too acidic for human consumption, but somehow perfect for arousing base instincts. The line between medicine and sin was paper thin, and tomatoes walked it perfectly, the fringe belief. Some 16th century priests claimed the tomato's scent triggered memories of carnal acts in unsuspecting men, that a single slice could corrupt the senses of a chaste man. One monk famously wrote that the tomato had the scent of Eve's first mistake, whatever that means. Modern scholars scoff, of course. They point out that tomatoes contain no proven aphrodisiac compounds, no alkaloids or euphoriants, nothing special. But they also can't explain the poetry, the obsession, the sheer sensuality wrapped up in this fruit for centuries. If it's just a salad ingredient, why did men write sonnets about it? Back in your room, the artist sets down the empty bowl and leans forward, eyes glassy. He touches your wrist lightly, as if unsure if you're real. "It's always you," he says. You raise an eyebrow. That's what they all say. He laughs, embarrassed, tries to recover. You let him squirm, he leaves later than he should. You don't kiss him. You don't have to. He's already painted you a dozen times. But now maybe he'll paint the tomato. Maybe he'll remember how it burst in his mouth. Maybe he'll lie awake wondering how something so simple could taste like prophecy. After he's gone, you clean the bowl, wrap the remaining slices in linen, and tuck them into your cold box. You'll eat them tomorrow, or not. Maybe you'll let them rot a little. Let the scent deepen until it turns from food into story. Because that's the real power of the love apple. It doesn't feed, it haunts. You're organising your spice drawer when you notice the cinnamon is nearly gone again. Not the cheap stuff. The real bark. Dark, brittle curls from Ceylon that snap between your fingers and make your skin smell like warmth. You smile to yourself because you know what that means. Your girls are using it again. Quietly, secretly. A pinch here, a dusting there. In tea, on lips, even in the folds of letters. You don't blame them. It's not just delicious. It's seductive. Dangerous, smuggled. And in your line of work, cinnamon is less of a kitchen spice and more of a weapon. You remember your first lesson well. Never waste cinnamon on a man who can't taste the difference. And you never have. You sit down, spread a silk cloth on the table, and begin sorting the rest of your stash. Star anise, clove, dried hibiscus, a few last curls of cassia. But it's the cinnamon that draws your attention tonight. It always comes back to cinnamon. Because once upon a time it changed everything. And not just for courtesans. In ancient Greece, this was gold, literally. Cinnamon was traded at a higher value than silver in certain ports, reserved for priests, royals, and, most interestingly, hetairai, the elite courtesans who served philosophers and warlords alike. They didn't just scent their bodies with it. They brewed it into love tonics, soaked it in oil for massages, and in at least one case, used it to poison a rival. Not that anyone proved that, of course. The funny thing, no one actually knew where cinnamon came from for centuries. Not even the Greeks. The spice was shrouded in layers of myth and secrecy. Traders told wild stories about birds building nests from cinnamon bark stolen from sacred trees, or about giant snakes that guarded the groves. All lies, of course, designed to keep the market price high and the supply lines obscure. But courtesans didn't need the whole story, just the scent. And tonight, you're using it again. Your guest is a merchant. Not a travelling one, too dusty. No, this one that runs a shipping business, which means he's polished, well-fed, and exactly the kind of man who prides himself on knowing the difference between true cinnamon and cassia. He'll appreciate the detail. You can work with that. You prepare a small bowl of pomegranate seeds soaked in spiced wine, with shaved cinnamon bark and a twist of orange rind. Beside it, a tiny pot of cinnamon oil, infused with vanilla and rose, warmed just enough to release the scent. Subtle, not overwhelming. The key is restraint. You never let the spice shout. He arrives exactly on time, early even, which tells you everything about him. He likes control. He doesn't like surprises, and he's hoping, deep down, that you'll break all of that in the next few hours. So you lean in close and brush a bit of cinnamon oil behind his ear. He shivers. Good. Then you feed him a single pomegranate seed between your fingers. He doesn't speak for a long time, just breathes. Cinnamon has that effect. It heats the blood. Not in a metaphorical sense, literally. It increases circulation, brings colour to the skin, brightens the eyes. Some scholars argue that it stimulates the same receptors as capsaicin, the compound in chili peppers, but in a softer, rounder way. More sensual, less screaming. But beyond the chemistry is the symbolism. Cinnamon has always been associated with seduction. It's in old Hebrew texts referenced as an ingredient in holy oils and bridal perfumes. It appears in ancient Chinese manuals of pleasure, where it's blended into wine meant to awaken the body. It was forbidden in certain Islamic courts for years, not because it was dangerous, but because it was too tempting. Too many men started writing poems after cinnamon baths. Too many women left their husbands for cooks. Here's the fringe theory. Some early naturalists believed cinnamon was mildly psychoactive. Not enough to hallucinate, but enough to relax our inhibitions. They said that when taken in combination with wine and oil, it opened the gates of flesh. The phrase stuck. You've seen it carved on the edge of an old brothel wall in Corinth, barely visible under a layer of lime wash. Back in your room, the merchant finally speaks. "This feels like a memory I forgot I had," he murmurs, fingertips grazing the inside of your wrist. "Something from a life I never lived." You smile, slow. Or a life you still could. He doesn't respond, just leans in closer. Hater, as he sleeps, soft snores curling through the room like a second scent. You sit by the window and let the rain fall on your ankles. You hold a curl of cinnamon between your fingers and rub it slowly until it warms. You wonder what it must have felt like to be one of the first courtesans to receive it, to hold that first foreign spice in your hands, still sticky with resin. To know what you had wasn't just rare, but illicit. To use it not just for flavour, but for power. Because that's what cinnamon really is. Not sweetness, not heat, but influence. A spice that demands to be remembered. And tonight, someone will remember you. You wake to the sound of clinking glass. Soft, rhythmic, like beads tapping against a mirror. It's coming from the basket just outside your window, where deliveries are dropped off under cover of dawn. You untie the string, lift the cloth, and find two things nestled together. A folded note that simply says "for dreaming," and a small ceramic bottle sealed with wax, warm to the touch. That warmth is unmistakable. Your breath catches. It's blue lotus wine. You've heard the legends, of course. Everyone in your trade has. That ancient Egypt's most celebrated courtesans, kites of pleasure as they were called, drank a wine steeped in blue lotus petals before rituals, feasts and seductions that ended with aching knees and incense smoke clinging to every inch of skin. But you've never seen the real thing before. Not like this. The colour alone is otherworldly, a violet blue that shimmers like oil when you tilt the bottle, as though it contains moonlight trapped in syrup. And the scent. Gods! The scent! You pop the seal with your nail and the aroma rises up immediately. Sweet, musky, with something aquatic and floral lurking underneath. Like honey stirred into rainwater. It makes you dizzy just sniffing it. You stare at the bottle a while, unsure whether to be reverent or afraid. Because this isn't a simple potion. This is ritual in a bottle. Tonight's guest is a woman, one of your rare female clients. She visits only on new moons. You've never asked why, and she's never offered. She arrives cloaked and current, her perfume laced with orange blossom and grief. You suspect she's mourning something no longer visible. Maybe a person. Maybe a version of herself she buried long ago. Her visits aren't about sex, they're about release. So you prepare carefully. You light the sandalwood and myrrh. You clean the floor with rose water and lay out the cushions in a spiral. Then slowly you pour the wine. It's thick, not syrupy, but close. The scent intensifies as it breathes, deepening, blooming. You serve it in 2 small bowls, one for her, one for yourself, because blue lotus is not something you administer, it's something you share. She arrives an hour after sundown wrapped in velvet. She removes her veil, lets her hair down, and says nothing as she sinks into the cushions. Her hands are shaking slightly. You hand her the bowl, she lifts it to her lips and drinks, and waits. You sip yours, just a little, enough to feel the ripple. It starts as a warmth in your spine, then a soft buzzing at the base of your skull. Not disorienting, just expansive, like your body is a room with high ceilings you never noticed before. Your heartbeat slows, your thoughts unravel like silk thread. The shadows around the room begin to hum, so does she. Not in words, in tone, a single note, low, steady, like the beginning of a song remembered from a previous life. You join her, and the sound grows, not louder, just wider. You've done nothing more than drink flower-steeped wine, and yet your body feels lit, alive, wholly even. She reaches for your hand and squeezes it once. Her eyes are wet, but not from sorrow, from awe, and that's the secret of blue lotus. It doesn't arouse in the way people expect. It doesn't ignite fire. It brings stillness, serenity, the kind that makes your skin feel like silk and your breath like prayer. Ancient Egyptians didn't just drink it for pleasure, they used it in ceremonies, for dreaming, for connecting to gods. Courtesans used it in funerary rites as much as in sex, because what it really does is open you. There are murals, actual historical ones, depicting women reclining with blue lotus blossoms in their hands, breathing in the scent, eyes half-lidded, surrounded by music and gold. Some historians claim they were drunk, others argue they were high, but you know better. They were present. The fringe belief that blue lotus opens the third eye, that it was used not for carnal awakening but spiritual sight, that its alkaloids, nuciferine and aporphine, don't just affect the body but thin the veil between worlds, that under its influence courtesans could speak to the dead, or to gods. You're not sure you believe that. But tonight you can't deny the feeling. Your client begins to sway, slowly, like she's underwater. Her voice hums again, and this time you realise she's chanting. Ancient Egyptian maybe, or something that sounds close. It doesn't matter. The meaning is in the vibration. Your whole body responds. The air is thick with memory, the scent of wine and petals folding over you like a second skin, and then stillness. You sit in silence for what feels like an hour. Eventually she rises. No words, no farewells, just a long, silent look, and the faintest smile before she disappears back into the night. You clean the bowls, wrap the bottle in velvet, and tuck it into your chest of sacred things. You know better than to offer it again casually. It's not a tool, it's a key to something older than language, older than longing, something sacred and secret, and very much illegal depending on where you are. The church banned it centuries ago. The papal records call it herba somniorum, the dream herb, and link it to heresy, witchcraft, and ungoverned acts of intimacy. You've seen the letters, smuggled, copied, hidden behind false bindings in books of psalms. Wherever blue lotus goes, it leaves mystery in its wake. You place the empty bowl on the windowsill and let the night wind dry it. You will not sleep tonight. You don't need to. You're already dreaming. You're waist-deep in warm water scented with neroli oil when the sea cucumber arrives. Not literally a khati, thankfully. It comes wrapped in parchment, tied with a twine, and left by your servant on the edge of the tub like a gift from a very confused deity. You sigh. Of all the things people request, perfumed roots, powdered beetles, divine wine, sea cucumber has to be the least charming. But then again, charm was never the point. It's not pretty, it's not poetic, it's not even that rare. But among certain circles, usually those where men wear too much jewellery and keep pet monkeys, this slippery ocean creature is considered one of the most potent aphrodisiacs in the world and, of course, banned in multiple cities. You dry your hands, unwrap the parcel and brace yourself for the smell. There it is, briny, earthy, slightly rotting, like old fish and wet coins. Even dried and cured, it still carries the scent of the ocean's underbelly. You hold it between two fingers like it might bite, and honestly, you wouldn't put it past it. The history of sea cucumber as an aphrodisiac goes back centuries, especially across Asia, China, Japan, and parts of the Pacific Islands. It was called sea ginseng for its supposed ability to invigorate the body, restore qi, and most importantly, stoke the fires of sexual endurance. Sailors swore by it, emperors hoarded it, even monks, yes monks, were caught with it in their pantries, usually under the label sacred nourishment. Right. You slice off a sliver with a thin bronze knife and drop it into a pan of boiling bone broth laced with ginger, chili and black garlic. You're not making a love potion, you're making soup because that's how this one works. It's not a perfume or a tincture, it's food, but food with intent. You stir slowly, adding a touch of rice wine and a pinch of dried chrysanthemum petals, just enough to confuse the senses, because this stuff is not subtle, it doesn't seduce, it challenges. Tonight's client is from the merchant ports, a coastal nobleman who grew up watching ships unload silks and spices from foreign lands. He's obsessed with imports and forbidden things. He talks about laws like there are menu options. When he sent word ahead asking for sea cucumber, you knew exactly the kind of night he wanted. You decant the broth into a lacquered bowl and place it in the centre of the low table. No garnish, no theatrics. The scent alone is enough to set the tone. Aggressive, intimate, and just a little off-putting. You leave the room dark, lit only by one lantern and the faint glow of coals. He arrives damp from the rain, cloaked, wearing a smile too wide for comfort. He peels off his gloves like he's shedding a disguise and sits without waiting to be invited. You offer the bowl. He takes it with both hands, sips, pauses, then drinks deeper. His eyes flutter closed. There's no mistaking it. He's feeling the heat. Here's the biological truth of it. Sea cucumber is packed with amino acids, saponins, and something called holothiorin, believed to have stimulating properties. It's not exactly Viagra, but it gets the blood moving, warms the core. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's classified as yang invigorating, meaning it builds masculine energy, sexual stamina, longevity, which is ironic given how grotesque the thing looks. There's nothing elegant about it. It's a rubbery tube with tentacles, and when alive it can eject its internal organs as a defense mechanism. You can't make this up. And yet here he is, glowing. The fringe fact? There are species of sea cucumber that are mildly psychoactive. In small doses, some cultures use them during ceremonial meals that blend trance, sex, and spiritual vision. There's an island in Micronesia where lovers eat dried sea cucumber before a full moon ritual said to dissolve shame and ignite connection. Whether that's true or just tourism legend, who knows? But you've seen what it does. Your client loosens his collar. The flush in his cheeks rises. He finishes the bowl and exhales like a man who just saw something holy or indecent. Then he leans forward. "I feel like I'm vibrating," he whispers. You smile. "Good. That means you're alive." He reaches for your hand, but you pull away, just enough to keep the tension. This isn't a night for vast movement. Sea cucumber doesn't reward greed. It builds, slowly, like a tide. Over the next hour he talks more than he ever has. About his ships, his lovers, his hunger. It's not conversation, it's confession. The broth has stripped him of his usual performance. He's sweat slick and honest in a way he probably won't remember. Eventually you guide him to rest, his body humming like a plucked string. You know he'll dream of waves, of hunger, of something ancient that doesn't speak in words. After he's gone, you return to the pot and ladle out the last bit for yourself. You sip, just a little. Salty, yes, but grounding, powerful. This is the kind of aphrodisiac people rarely talk about. Not perfumed, not alchemical, but visceral, primeval, the kind of thing that bypasses language and goes straight for the instincts. You clean the bowl in silence, letting the steam rise and curl against your face. The scent will linger for days, in your linens, in your skin. You hope it does, because sometimes seduction doesn't come from sweetness or silk or softness. Sometimes it comes from the sea, and it smells like survival. It starts with a letter, of course, hand-delivered by a man in white gloves and no shoes, the way they do in Kyoto when things are meant to be both discreet and sacred. He bows without meeting your eyes, sets the envelope on your table like it might burn the wood, and vanishes into the autumn fog. You open it slowly, expecting silk. Instead, you find rice paper soaked in chrysanthemum oil, soft and floral, edged with calligraphy so fine it looks like spider thread. Inside, the message is short. The leaves have turned, the petals await. Come prepared. You've received invitations like this before. Rare, formal, unmistakable. It means you're being called not just as a courtesan, but as an artist. Someone who understands the old codes, the unspoken rituals of seduction that aren't about bodies but balance. Your fingers reach instinctively for two things, the bottle of kuchinashi clove oil and your private jar of powdered chrysanthemum. Both of them technically legal until they're not. See, this combination is common in traditional Japanese medicine, used for warmth, for clarity, even for migraines. But in the hands of a geisha or a high-level courtesan, it becomes something else entirely. You prepare with care. The clove oil is sharp, spicy, and nearly numbing on the tongue. You mix it into a warm almond base, adding a few drops of camellia to soften the blow. Clove stimulates circulation, raises body heat, and when massaged into pressure points, behind the knees, the inner wrists, the line of the throat, it creates a subtle tingling that builds and builds. Not an explosion, a simmer. The chrysanthemum, on the other hand, is cooling, floral, almost medicinal. You steep it into a tea with dried orange peel and a few threads of saffron for complexity. It's a strange brew, one that both calms the mind and sharpens sensation. The body is relaxed, but the skin, alive, receptive. And tonight, that's the entire point. The tea ceremony takes place in a private achaya, not a brothel, not a house of scandal, but a tea house reserved for the oldest, most elegant seductions. You arrive just after sunset, wrapped in indigo silk, your obi tied not in the traditional bow, but in a looser knot that suggests suggestion more than commitment. Your face is bare. Only your lips are touched, with a single stroke of red clove oil, just enough to leave a trace of heat when you smile. The room is lit by candlelight and rain. Tatami underfoot, low cushions, the scent of hinoki cedar says, lingering in the air. Your host enters silently. He's older, graceful, a politician perhaps, or a poet pretending not to be one. His face is unreadable, but his eyes linger just a little too long on your hands. He's here for connection, not performance. You serve the tea first, chrysanthemum and orange. You pour without speaking, and he drinks without breaking eye contact. His breath slows, shoulders ease. He notices everything now, the sound of rain on the roof, the twitch of your finger, the way the candlelight catches the oil on your neck. That's the magic of Chrysanthemum. It doesn't seduce, it sharpens, it brings the moment into focus. And once the tea has done its work, you move to the second act. Clove oil. You dip 2 fingers into the warm mixture and press it gently onto his pulse points, just beneath the ears, along the collarbone at the base of his thumbs. His skin rises to meet your touch. He exhales like someone coming out of a long sleep. You say nothing. That's part of the game. No words, just breath, scent, warmth, and the art of timing. Historically, both clove and chrysanthemum were central to Japanese medicinal and erotic practice. Clove oil was imported through the Dutch East India trade, restricted in use, often reserved for the elite. Too much and it could cause dizziness. Too little and it was just perfume. But the right amount, applied in the right moment, a quiet inferno. Chrysanthemum, meanwhile, was sacred, associated with purity, longevity, and imperial grace, but among the geisha, it had a secret role. Mixed into teas and oils, it was said to open emotional pathways, not just arousal, but vulnerability. A man drinking chrysanthemum tea from your hand wasn't just thirsty, he was offering his heart. There's a debate among scholars about whether these ingredients actually changed physiology, or simply perception. Did clove truly stir desire? Did chrysanthemum create openness? Or were they symbols, tools of theatrical mastery, in a culture where every gesture mattered? You don't care. You've seen the results. Back in the Achaea, your client is still. Blissfully still. His gaze doesn't search you, it rests on you like you're the first still thing in his life. He reaches for your hand, not to pull, just to hold, and when he finally speaks, his voice is soft. I feel like nothing else exists. You smile and lean in. Perfect. That means you're here. Later, when you leave, he bows so deeply his forehead touches the floor. He doesn't follow. He knows better. Back in your rooms, you cleanse your skin of the clove oil, brush the chrysanthemum leaves into the fire, and sit in silence, letting the night settle around you. Some aphrodisiacs don't flood the senses. They whisper. And when wielded right, a whisper is louder than any scream. You're almost asleep when you smell it. Musk. That unmistakable animal warmth wafting through the shutter cracks like a lover who doesn't knock. It's thick, earthy, and alive, settling at the base of your skull with the weight of a memory you didn't know you had. You sit up slowly, heart beating just a little too fast because you know exactly what this means. Someone's using musk, deer oil, and not just a little. This is a declaration. You throw on a robe and step out into the corridor. The scent grows stronger with every step, faintly sweet, almost smoky, tinged with something raw. Not rot, not perfume, just presence. You don't even have to see who it is. You already know. She's leaning in your doorway like she owns the moon, a high-ranking courtesan from the royal inner court, taller than you, cloaked in soul, lips the colour of betrayal. You've shared clients before, but rarely secrets. Tonight, she's brought both. I have a gift, she says without smiling. Then she pulls a small vial from her sash, gold-rimmed, lacquered, and sealed with a crimson tassel. It hums with heat even in the cold air. You know it's banned, you whisper. Of course, she replies. That's why it works. Musk is forbidden in this district. Not because it's harmful, but because it's unfair. The city's governors ruled years ago that it induces unnatural longing, which is a polite way of saying it makes people irrational, addicted, worshipful. There were incidents. Affairs that ruined kingdoms. One magistrate supposedly gave away an entire estate just for a woman who wore it beneath her collarbone. You take the vial from her, and your fingers buzz slightly as you hold it. It's rare. Real musk. Not synthetic. This came from a Himalayan musk deer. Its scent gland dried, aged, and processed into oil so potent that a single drop could change the entire chemistry of a room. You warm it gently between your palms, just enough to release the full effect. Then you dab it behind your ears, at your temples, and, carefully, along your clavicle. The reaction is immediate. Your skin tingles. Your breath deepens. You feel known. Like your own body is revealing secrets you didn't authorize. She watches you, amused. Still works, she murmurs. You don't ask why she brought it. You'll find out soon enough. You prepare the room together in silence. Low cushions, no incense, nothing that would compete with the scent. Just candlelight diffused through silk screens. And in the centre of it all, a single glass bowl with warm water to reflect the musk back into the air. A slow, erotic diffusion. Your shared client is someone important. Political. He wears confidence like armour, and has never once looked vulnerable in public. Tonight, that will change. When he arrives, he barely speaks. Just steps inside, a breath catches and stops. The musk hits him like a wall. His body reacts before his mind does. Eyes dilate, shoulders relax. He smiles, but not like a man, like a boy remembering his first crush. You and your companion move in tandem. No rush, no false seduction, just the long, luxurious act of existing. That's the power of musk. Doesn't ask for attention, it commands it. Subtly, ruthlessly, it fills the air with pheromones that override thought. Historically, musk was one of the most sought-after substances in the ancient world. Used in perfumes, medicines, even incense offerings. It carried the dual symbolism of the sacred and the profane. The same vial might be worn by a queen in her temple rituals, and then passed to a concubine for a midnight visit. It blurred the line between heaven and flesh. And it was outrageously expensive, worth more than gold. So valuable that musk deer were hunted nearly to extinction for it, which eventually led to the first bans. Not for morality, for economy. But courtesans always had their ways. The fringe law. Some claimed that musk could be harvested without harm if done under a new moon, with the deer's blessing, in exchange for a vow of secrecy. There are stories of women who learned the old words, who coaxed the deer with flute music and silent gestures, and walked away with scent glands cradled in silk. Myths, maybe. But in your line of work, myths are often just old truths dressed in better stories. Back in the room, your client is sweating, not from heat, but from overload. His pupils are wide, his chest rising and falling like he's been running. But he hasn't moved an inch. He's just watching, staring, drowning. Your companion places her hand on his chest. He exhales like a man who's been holding his breath for years. There's no sex that night, not really. Just breathing. Eye contact, proximity, every shift of your body is a paragraph, every glance, a whisper. He trembles once, just once, when you lean close enough for the musk to catch in his throat. When he finally leaves, he doesn't say thank you. He just stands at the door, dazed, like he's not entirely sure where the last 3 hours went. You and the other courtesan share a bowl of warm rice wine in the aftermath. She smirks as she traces the rim with her fingertip. They'll outlaw speech next, she says. They already have, you reply. You return the vial to her. She shakes her head. Keep it, she says. You'll know when you need it again. You tuck it into your sash, and the warmth of it seeps into your skin. You can still feel the man's gaze hours later. Not lecherous, not desperate, just undone. Because musk isn't a scent. It's a truth. And truth, when worn by the right woman, becomes law. The sun isn't even up yet when the footman arrives, pale and breathless. Like someone who's seen something they weren't supposed to. He's carrying a velvet satchel clasped with a tiny gold frog. You take one look at it and sigh. Because of course you know exactly where this came from, and you know what it means. Versailles. The palace where powdered wigs and powdered poison shared the same drawer. Where l'amour meant 6 different things, depending on the hallway you were in. Where courtesans weren't just women, they were players in a game of survival, played in silk subtle slippers and scored in glances and sighs. You thank the boy and send him away with a plum. Then you shut the door, pull the curtains, and open the satchel. Inside, 3 glass vials, 1 sachet of dried herbs, and a handwritten note, no signature, just a sentence. He believes in magic, give him what he deserves. You smile at that. So, tonight is a love philter night, Versailles style. You unpack the files one by one. One contains finely ground garnet dust, deep red, glittering, dangerously sharp. Another, what looks like dried frog heart, powdered almost to nothing. The third is unlabelled, but when you uncork it, you recognise the scent instantly. Ambergris steeped in rosewater and a trace of opium. Sweet, narcotic, and deeply familiar. The sachet is filled with crushed violet petals and lemon balm. All of it together is alchemy. Not the kind that changes lead into gold, but the kind that changes intent into outcome. In the court of Louis XV, love philters were all the rage. They were illegal, of course. Banned under royal edict, not because of their effects, but because of the scandals they caused. One too many duchesses fainting in opera boxes, one too many noblemen declaring undying love after a single sip of spiced wine. Everyone knew it was the courtesans, the real ones, who had the recipes. The powdered gems, the botanical tinctures, the rituals performed under moonlight and sealed with a kiss. Most claimed it was all superstition. It wasn't. You grind the garnet dust with the dried violet, add just enough rose-scented opium elixir to turn it into a thick crimson paste, and wrap it in beeswax paper. This will be your offering. Not for him to ingest, oh no, you'll burn it. Let the scent do the work. Tonight's client is a nobleman fallen from grace, recently widowed, freshly paranoid and utterly convinced he's cursed. He believes a witch has enchanted his dreams. He's tried prayer, he's tried wine, now he's trying you. You prepare the room like a chapel, low light, no mirrors, bowls of rose petals on the floor, a single candle in the centre, and the love philter paste placed carefully on a silver plate. When you light it, the smoke curls upward like a spell, thick and sweet, clinging to the ceiling before sinking back down, as if it's deciding who deserves to breathe it. He arrives cloaked in mourning colours, but you know better. His perfume gives him away, citrus and cardamom, hope disguised as grief. You invite him to sit, offer him nothing but air. He breathes in deeply, once, twice, and then he starts to weep. That's the thing with these philters. They don't always stir lust. Sometimes they stir remorse, and that's even more powerful. He confesses, not to you, not really, but to the room, to the space, to the smoke. He talks of a woman he abandoned for status, of letters he burned, of love turned into political leverage. You never touch him. Not once. Instead, you take the frog powder and mix it into a small bowl of honey, then anoint your own wrists. It doesn't smell like anything special. A little metallic, a little earthy. But when he leans in to inhale, he shudders. You're not sure if he's aroused or afraid. Either way, it's working. There's an old fringe story, mostly whispered by bored chambermaids and drunk court jesters, that powdered frog heart, when mixed with garnet and ambergris, could cause unwise devotion. That whoever smelled it would imprint on the nearest warm body like a baby duck. There were rumours of noblemen crawling under tables at court dinners, begging courtesans to say their names. Of course, the church tried to stop it. They called the use of philters witchcraft, heresy, a threat to moral order. But what they really feared was freedom. Because a courtesan with a love philter didn't have to be beautiful, noble, or even agreeable. She only had to know the recipe. Back in your room, the nobleman is dazed now, soft, not docile exactly, just open. His voice is barely a whisper. I feel like I'm not myself. You lean in. Maybe that's a good thing. He leaves with shaking hands and eyes that refuse to focus. He'll remember everything and nothing. He'll convince himself it was magic. That you're a witch. That you bewitched him. Let him. That's the power of the philter. It doesn't have to be real to work. You clean the bowl, snuff the candle, and fold the beeswax paper remnants into a little triangle. You slip it into your book of secrets, pressed flat between a lock of hair and a pressed violet. Not because you need to remember the ingredients, but because it's nice to remember that sometimes you were the spell. You're stirring honey into a bowl of thick almond milk when the sun finally slips behind the tiled rooftops and the street outside quiets into that velvet hush only evening can bring. It's been a long day, too many whispers, not enough coin, but you're not thinking about your books tonight. You're thinking about the syrup, sweet dark with a subtle bitter note that lingers on the tongue like a secret you regret telling. You remove the lid from the small jade jar and peer inside. There it is, the Borgia nightshade syrup. Thick, shiny, still potent after all these years, and forbidden in every corner of the known world, though somehow always making its way back through velvet pouches and hand-to-hand trades in bathhouses and boudoirs. You scoop a drop with the tip of a carved spoon and let it fall into the milk. It barely changes the colour, but the scent. That's where the danger lives. Floral, sweet, and underneath something darker, like crushed cherries soaked in ink. It was Lucrezia Borgia's signature, or so the stories say, the Pope's daughter, the poisoner in silk. though whether she truly used it or was just the scapegoat for a family too wrapped in papal politics and marital intrigue to keep their hands clean, you'll never know. What you do know is that the syrup associated with her name was no simple tonic. It was a mixture of Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade, and honey, aged with crushed datura seeds and wine-soaked hemlock root. Not enough to kill, just enough to soften, or confuse, or seduce. And tonight someone's asked for it. You received the request 2 days ago, a folded note with no name, sealed in wax with a ring you recognise, deep green, signet carved with the crest of a long-dead noble house that technically shouldn't exist anymore. You've seen it once before, years ago, when a man with 2 white teeth and an appetite for ruin spent a night in your bed and vanished before dawn, leaving a single violet in your water bowl. Now he's back, and he wants the syrup. The room is already prepared. No candles tonight, just a single lamp turned low and golden. The drapes are pulled, the mirror veiled. You've prepared a shallow dish of grapes soaked in clove oil and fig wine, and of course the almond milk, now laced with just 2 drops of the syrup. He arrives wearing morning black and a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You watch him scan the room, checking the exits even as he compliments the decor. He accepts the milk without hesitation. He doesn't sip, he drinks, all of it. And then the transformation begins. First, the pupils dilate, slowly. Then the shoulders loosen. His voice softens. He leans back against the cushions like he's just remembered how to exist in his own skin. It's always like that with this syrup. Not pleasure, not even desire exactly. Surrender. He begins talking, not about politics or power, he's always talking about those things, but about guilt, the weight of betrayal, the faces of men he's ruined, women he's discarded. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He's not capable of that. But he asks for presence, for witness, and so you stay. Deadly nightshade in large doses causes delirium, hallucination, coma, but in careful quantities it softens the edges of perception. Light seems warmer, touch feels magnified, thought becomes liquid. The Borgia syrup was legendary not because it killed, but because it didn't. It invited, and when mixed with honey and wine, as it always was, it tasted divine. There are historical records of Roman and Renaissance courtesans using Belladonna to create pliant affections. There are trial transcripts in dusty Vatican archives, stories of women accused of sorcery for using love syrup to pull secrets from the lips of generals. Some of them were burned. Others were married into silence. None of them ever confirmed the recipe. That's the thing about power. Once it works, you hide it. You protect it. The fringe legend? That Lucrezia Borgia never used poison to kill, but to bind. That every man who ever truly loved her had tasted her syrup. That the syrup didn't cause death, but obsession. That somewhere, deep in the Roman catacombs, the original mixture is still sealed in a gold vial, wrapped in a black lace glove. In your room, the man with the signet ring is quiet now. His head leans against your thigh, not sexually, not tenderly, just quietly. Like he's safe for the first time in decades. You stroke his hair once and wonder how many names he's forgotten just to stay alive. He whispers, "It wasn't supposed to end like this." You don't ask what this means. Instead, you offer him a slice of fig. He eats it from your fingers like a penitent taking communion. Eventually he rises, kisses your hand and disappears into the night. No payment, no farewell, just the scent of ink and cherry clinging to the room like a curse. You return to the milk bowl and wash it clean with rosewater. Then you take the jade jar, reseal the lid, and tuck it beneath the loose floorboard under your bed. It's not something you use often. It's not something you trust, but it's something you know, because when your words fail, when your smile falters, when power slips from your hands like silk, that syrup remains, dark, viscous, waiting. Smoke curls through the rafters as the night thickens, wrapping your chambers in a lazy haze of rose, tobacco, and something deeper, sweet, almost overripe, with a trace of poppy bitterness at the edge. You wave your fan lazily, watching the petals on the floor tremble in the current. You're not expecting anyone tonight, not officially. But you know how these things go. You light the lamps anyway, just low enough to blur the walls and make the world feel smaller, more secret. Then you prepare a tray, rose petals, opium resin, a bottle of silver-filtered wine. Mughal courtesans called it smoke of the garden. Others called it madness in velvet. Either way, it's one of the oldest recipes in your collection, passed down not in books or scrolls, but in glances, touches, and quiet laughter behind veils. The mixture is delicate, precise, a blend of black opium softened with rose paste, saffron milk, and a few drops of tinctured nutmeg. It's not a sedative, not exactly. It's a door, a way out, or in. You heat it slowly over a candle, letting the resin melt into a pliant paste. You press it into a miniature coal burner shaped like a peacock, and as it begins to smoulder, the scent unfurls like silk unravelling. Heavy, hypnotic. The kind of smell that slips into a person's skin and stays there like the memory of someone you never kissed. And just like that, she arrives. No fanfare, no knock, just the whisper of slippers on the mat and the gentle sound of gold bracelets kissing. Her sari is dark green, embroidered with crescent moons, and her gaze is soft but unreadable. You've heard of her, one of the old Mughal wives, trained in poetry, dance, and manipulation so subtle it feels like adoration. You've never met her, though, until now. She sits across from you and closes her eyes, doesn't speak, just breathes. You hand her the pipe. She inhales, slow and steady, her fingers trembling slightly as she passes it back. Then she exhales a stream of smoke that smells like crushed memories and hot jasmine. You take your turn. The first breath hits like warm silk, soft, sweet, and too easy. The second pulls you down, not into sleep, but into presence. Your limbs loosen. The corners of the room seem to breathe. You taste sugar on your tongue and something darker beneath it, like regret steeped in rosewater. The room becomes a temple, the floor a stage. Nothing matters now but being. She begins to speak. A poem at first, a ghazal, soft and low. Each line lingering just long enough to pull meaning from your bones. You respond in kind. It's not about conversation, it's about rhythm, wordplay, the dance of implication. You forget what time it is. Maybe you even forget what your name is. That's the power of the rose-laced opium. In Mughal courts, this was more than indulgence. It was ritual. Opium, softened with rose or milk, was consumed in salons where courtesans performed not just for pleasure, but for power. They were artists, philosophers, seductresses, and political weapons. The rose was added not to mask the opium's bite, but to make it sing, to turn intoxication into elevation. Officially, these mixtures were outlawed under certain emperors. Religious scholars condemned them. Edicts were issued. Salons were raided. But the trade continued, always through whispers and small deliveries wrapped in silk. Sometimes the pipes were shaped like roses. Sometimes the courtesans wore rose water behind their ears and on their inner thighs, so the scent would mingle with the smoke. The fringe belief? That this specific mixture allowed the mind to leave the body during climax, that it turned physical pleasure into a spiritual departure, that lovers who shared rose opium smoke could dream the same dream. One legend even claims two courtesans died holding hands mid-dream, their hearts still beating in perfect unison. Whether it's true or not, no one knows, but the story gets retold again and again, and you've seen enough to wonder. Back in your room, the Tawayef opens her eyes. "You feel it now," she whispers. You nod. You do. It's not just the intoxication. It's the way your body feels distant but vivid, like you're made of silk and breath. It's the sense of knowing without needing to ask. You could stay like this for hours. You will. She offers you a fig dipped in the same rose opium paste. You bite into it, and the taste is overwhelming. Sweet, lush, dark. It drips down your chin. She laughs, and the sound is brighter than it should be. You realise distantly that you've both forgotten what you were supposed to be doing. It doesn't matter. You lie on the floor beside her, breathing in smoke and silence. There is no transaction here, no payment, just the sharing of something older than money, older than rules. Eventually the smoke fades, the opium settles, the room returns to its edges. She rises, adjusts her sari and nods once. No goodbyes, no gratitude, just acknowledgement. You watch her disappear into the night, then return to your burner. The coals are black, the paste is gone, but the scent clings to your skin. You clean nothing. Let the night linger. Because this isn't a fragrance you wear. It's a state you become, and tonight you became something sacred. The drums start before the sunset. Not loud, just low and steady, like a heartbeat behind a curtain. You feel them in your ribs even before the sound reaches your ears. The whole compound seems to tilt toward the rhythm. Dancers begin stretching in the courtyards. Incense is lit. Water jugs are passed around, full of hibiscus and lime. It's going to be a long night. And you're not dancing, you're not singing. You're brewing, because this time it's not about smoke or scent or forbidden syrups. Tonight it's cola nut, small, bitter, earth-toned, unimpressive to look at really. But oh, how appearances deceive. This is a stimulant like no other. Natural, potent, and in the right hands, seductive beyond belief. Tonight you're using it the old way, crushed, sifted, stirred into a drink that is halfway between an offering and a dare. You take the nuts, 6 of them, carefully peeled and sun-dried, and grind them into a coarse powder. The scent is rich and bitter, something between coffee and soil after rain. You add it to a bowl of warm water, flavoured with crushed dates, tamarind paste, and a sprig of mint. Then you add one last thing, cayenne. Just a pinch, just enough to light a fire in the blood. This mixture, served in calabash bowls, is known for a very specific effect. It doesn't make people delirious. It doesn't dull the mind. If anything, it sharpens everything: awareness, sensation, appetite. It's not an aphrodisiac in the soft, smoky way of saffron or lotus. No, this one is raw, unapologetic, unrefined. It stokes the fire and dares you not to get burned. And that's exactly what your guest tonight wants. He's not a prince, not a merchant, not a poet, he's a drummer. One of the travelling ones, barefoot, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and eyes like storms. You've seen him before, heard his music spilling through marketplaces like thunder wrapped in silk. When he sent for you, he didn't use paper or coin, he just looked at you, tapped a rhythm on his chest, then walked away. Now he's coming back. You serve the cola nut brew in Sa'ad. No words, no gestures, just the bowl, warm and dark in your hands. He drinks it in one breath. Then he starts tapping, not with a drum, with his fingers, on the floor, on the wall, on your skin. The beat is complex, 3, then 5, then 7. Something off-kilter and primal. It's not a song, it's a summons. You drink your share of the cola. The bitterness hits first, then the heat, then the hum, not in your ears but in your blood. You feel your breath quicken, your skin tightens, colours sharpen. The room contracts and expands with every pulse of the rhythm. The two of you don't speak. You move. He plays. You respond. Your body becomes an echo, not dancing, not performing, communing. The rhythm fills the room, the walls, your limbs. Everything is vibrating, not just with music, with want, but not the gentle kind. This is hunger, raw, awake. Historically, cola nuts were used across West Africa in everything from political ceremonies to love rituals, chewed before battles, shared in courtships, ground into paste for weddings and funerals alike. They were currency, they were offerings, they were declarations. Among certain royal courts, it was said that cola served not only to invigorate the body but to unleash it, to pull down the masks people wore for propriety and reveal what lived beneath. It's why some empires banned its use among courtesans, too many nobles leaving their wives for the drummers, too many whispered names shouted in the night. The fringe tale, that cola, when mixed with cayenne and tamarind, causes a kind of soul opening, a rush so intimate it strips away shame. One folktale tells of a queen who drank it before bed and woke up married to her favourite dancer. She claimed it was a holy accident. Her advisors disagreed. But you understand now. Your skin feels electric. Every glance is a dialogue. Every breath, a poem. You've become rhythm, heat, motion. Your bodies never touch in any obvious way, but the air between you is charged, every inch aching with the potential to ignite. And then, just as suddenly it stops, the drumming, the movement, the pulse. He bows once, deep and slow. Then he leaves, barefoot as always, vanishing into the night like a spell that's already worked. You collapse into the cushions, panting, flushed, wired. It's not over. The cola's still in you. You pour the last of the brew into the fire and let it hiss. The room fills with steam and spice and something older than time. You lick the edge of the bowl and taste the bitter again. Some aphrodisiacs seduce, some soften, but this one awakens. And once you're awake, darling, sleep is never the same again. The sun rises strange the next morning, thick, red and slow, like it's trying to crawl back under the horizon. You pull the curtains shut. You're not ready for light yet. Your skin still hums faintly from the cola, your dreams still blurred around the edges, half soaked in rhythm. You need something softer today, something slow, familiar. You open the chest by the hearth, pull out a small clay jar wrapped in banana leaf and smile. Cacao, raw, unsweetened, bitter as heartbreak. But not just any cacao, this is from the Mayans. Fermented, dried, and stone ground. Still gritty, still alive. Traded from deep in the jungle and smuggled across borders like it's a weapon. Which in your hands it absolutely is. You place a pinch of ground chili in a bowl, then add the cacao. Thick. You stir in warm water and a bit of cornmeal until it forms a thick, frothy drink. No sugar, no cream. This isn't hot chocolate. This is a ritual. And it used to be banned for that exact reason. In the Mayan world, cacao was sacred. A gift from the gods, drunk by priests, warriors, and courtesans alike. Not to relax, not to sweeten life, but to elevate it. It didn't just wake the body, it made it burn. Tonight's client is different. Quiet, tired. A philosopher or a liar? Probably both. He wants connection, or so he said in his note. No games, no roles, just something real. And you know that request isn't for you, really. It's for himself. He's forgotten what it feels like to be a person. So you give him the drink. You serve it in a rough clay cup. No gold, no polish, just something that holds heat. He lifts it to his lips, hesitates. The smell is sharp. Earth, smoke, and something floral you didn't tell him about. A sliver of orchid root, steeped in rosewater and added at the last second. Just enough to tilt the taste toward pleasure. He drinks. His face shifts. First confusion, then shock, then something close to reverence. You sip yours. The effect is subtle at first, a warmth that starts in the belly and rises slowly. Not with the heat of spice, but the slow build of anticipation. It doesn't hit the way wine does. There's no blur, no fuzziness, instead, focus. Your thoughts sharpen, colours deepen, time stretches. You become acutely aware of your body, the weight of your hands, the softness of the cushions, the air moving over your collarbone. Every part of you is a nerve. He breathes out, slow and shaky. I haven't felt like this since I was young, he says. You're not old, you reply. He doesn't argue. Just looks at you like he's forgotten what he was supposed to do next. That's the power of cacao. It doesn't seduce. It doesn't dominate. It reminds. It awakens the body to itself, to its capacity. Mayan courtesans used it before ceremonies, before dances, before sex, yes, but also before grief rituals. Because cacao was for intensity, not just pleasure, presence. That's why the Spaniards feared it. When they first arrived in the New World, they saw women drinking cacao in public, nobles, priestesses, lovers, and they were horrified. It was bitter, unsweetened, messy, but the women didn't care. They drank it standing, sitting, on balconies in bed. They owned it, and that terrified the colonizers, so they banned it. In some ports, women caught with fermented cacao were punished, called witches, branded for lust, because the drink didn't just stimulate, it freed. It gave women the right to feel too much. You know the feeling. The fringe story? Some Mayan texts describe cacao as a medium for divine communication, not with gods, but with lovers. It was believed that drinking cacao at the same time as another person connected your spirits, your dreams. You could whisper into their soul across distance or even beyond death. There are love letters carved in stone, sealed with a cacao mark, still visible, still so called. Back in your room, your guest has leaned forward, his forehead resting in his palms. He's not crying, not speaking, just breathing in long, slow waves. You sit beside him, say nothing, that's enough. Eventually he speaks. I forgot what it felt like, to be in my own skin. You nod. You understand. He leaves a satchel of gold by the door, but you don't open it. Not yet. You're still warm, still floating. You gather the cups. The residue clings to the sides, thick and red-brown, almost like blood. You wash them carefully, with rose water in your fingertips, because this isn't something you scrub away. This is something you honour. You drain the last sip from your own cup, and your body sighs in gratitude. Because cacao doesn't seduce with tricks. It doesn't need flowers or silk or moonlight. Cacao speaks to the animal, the divine, and the forgotten parts of us. and when it speaks, the body listens. You wake to frost on the window panes, thin and sharp like spider silk spun from bone. The cold has crept in without permission, curling beneath your sheets, stiffening the joints of your fingers. You wrap yourself in wool and move to the hearth, hands shaking slightly as you stir the embers back to life. This morning calls for something heavy, grounding, dangerous. You reach for a bottle tucked deep behind the herbs and oils, sealed in black wax and wrapped in cloth as if it's ashamed of itself. A gift from a Hungarian apothecary who'd been exiled for spiritual misconduct, which, given his penchant for embalming fluids and whispered confessions, could mean anything. The label has long since worn away, but you remember what it is: moon milk, laced with hemlock. You unstopper the bottle and pour a measure into a copper pan. It pours slow, thick, nearly iridescent, like cream stirred with ash. Beneath the sweetness, the unmistakable scent of fennel and poison. You add cinnamon bark and a few shavings of nutmeg, not to disguise the taste, but to keep it civilized. The milk is sacred, yes, but also unhinged. It needs to be tamed. This was once used in Transylvania, in temples built to mimic the night sky, where priestesses drank it under the full moon and claimed visions of love, power, even prophecy, and also madness, because hemlock, even in tiny amounts, is not gentle. It numbs, softens, and then, in the wrong dosage, silences. But in the right hands, it unbinds. You've only used it twice. The first time was for a noblewoman with insomnia and an inconvenient passion for her own sister-in-law. The second for a poet who asked to taste silence. Neither of them were the same after, but they'd asked for truth, and that's what moon milk gives. Not lust, not fantasy, truth. And tonight someone's asking again. A letter, slipped under your door at midnight, pressed in wax with a sigil you don't recognize. No name, no request, just one word in perfect cursive: confess. It's the kind of night that makes your bones ache. You warm the milk over low flame, watching as the edges begin to shimmer silver. You add one final ingredient, a single blue poppy petal, dried and crumbled, to deepen the trance. Then you pour it into 2 stone cups and set the tray by the window, where the moonlight hits just right. The reflection dances on the surface like a blessing, or a dare. When he arrives, he doesn't knock, he just steps in, tall, angular, face carved by regret and rain. He looks at you like he knows you, though you're certain you've never met. He doesn't say a word. You hand him the cup, he drinks, so do you. The first sensation is warmth, thick and slow, curling around your stomach like a silken rope. Then the tingling in your fingers, then the slow fade of edges, sharpness dissolving into suggestion. The room shifts, sounds stretch you. The fire seems to pulse in time with your heartbeat, and then the visions begin. Not grand, not dramatic, just honesty. You see yourself, really see. The masks, the hunger, the way you smile when you don't mean it, the way you've pretended to fall in love just to survive, the way you've forgotten how much pretending you've done. He's seeing it too. You can tell by the way he breathes. Ragged, uneven. He's crying now and he doesn't even notice. That's moon milk. It doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need. Historically, moon milk was both feared and revered. In the darker parts of Eastern Europe, it was used in rituals by secretive love cults, small circles of women and men who drank it before confessions, not to gods, but to one another. It was outlawed by the 18th century, not for its ingredients, but for its outcomes. Too many people leaving their marriages, too many people realizing they'd built lives on lies. It was blamed for heresy, witchcraft, political dissent. You name it. But it wasn't magic. It was just a mirror. The fringe theory. That moon milk, when drunk in tandem, links the minds of the drinkers, creates a psychic tether. That's why it was used by lovers separated by war, courtesans sent into exile, soulmates who could only meet in dreams. Scholars scoff at the idea, of course, but they've never shared it on a winter night under a full moon with a stranger who cries like he knows your name. Your guest finally speaks. "I loved her," he says, voice hoarse. You nod. She knew. "I betrayed her anyway." You say nothing. That's not your part. Instead, you take his empty cup and cradle it between your palms. The warmth is fading fast. The milk is working its way out of your blood now, leaving behind a strange hollowness, like a room after a funeral. Quiet, honest, real. He leaves without touching you, without looking back. You clean the cups, rinse them into the cold rose water and place them in the dark. Moon milk shouldn't be left in the light for too long. It remembers, it lingers. You place the bottle back in its silk pouch and whisper to it, as the apothecary taught you. Not for protection, for respect, because some aphrodisiacs aren't about seduction or pleasure. Some are about reckoning, and when the moon is full, the milk stirs and tells the truth. You're sweeping petals off the mat when the knock comes. 4 sharp raps, not impatient, not hesitant, just deliberate. You pause mid-motion, one hand still gripping the broom handle, already knowing who it is before you answer. There's only one person in your network who knocks like that, and she never visits unless something strange is involved. You open the door. She's standing there barefoot, covered in dust and altitude, her long black braids stiff with wind. A satchel hangs from her shoulder, embroidered with protective knots. She doesn't greet you, just walks in, loosens her cloak, and sets a small wooden box on your table. It's carved with cloud motifs, not the fluffy kind, the storm kind. "I need a second opinion," she says. You unlatch the box. Inside is a shriveled lump, tan, mottled, fibrous, and disturbingly ambiguous. At first glance, it could be a root. A mushroom, something that belongs in a compost heap, but the moment you inhale its scent, faintly metallic, earthy, with a ghost of decay, you know exactly what you're looking at. Yatsa Gumboo, also known as Himalayan Viagra, or, in less polite company, caterpillar fungus. Technically, it's both. A parasite and a plant. A fungus that infects caterpillars underground, grows through their bodies, and sprouts like a finger from their skulls. Monks call it winter worm, summer grass. You call it what it is, wildly illegal aphrodisiac, revered and banned across multiple empires. You pick it up between 2 fingers, it's light, fragile, almost hollow, like something that's already halfway to dust. "I thought they stopped selling these," you murmur. "They did," she says, "which is why I want to be sure it's real." You nod. There's only one way to know. You boil water, add cardamom, star anise, and a sliver of dried pear. When it's hot enough, you drop the Yatsa Gumboo in and let it steep. The water turns cloudy, like bone broth. You ladle it into a small ceramic bowl and the scent blooms, a mix of soil, old leather, and ghost pepper. You take a sip, then wait. The warmth starts in your core. Not like wine or saffron, there's no buzz, no unravelling of nerves, just vitality. Like someone's tightened the ropes inside your muscles. Your breath comes deeper, your chest opens, your thoughts sharpen like flint. You feel present, dangerous, a little too alive. Your companion watches you with one eyebrow raised. You nod once. It's real. She exhales and removes another piece from her satchel. "Then I need to know how to use it without killing someone." Ah, there it is. You split the remaining Yatsa Gumboo into 3 parts and start grinding one section with dried ginger and ginseng root. You know the ratio, you've used it before. Carefully, quietly, because this stuff is not for the faint of heart. It's not a powder you sneak into drinks. It's not a subtle oil. It's a statement, and once taken, the body remembers. Historically, Yatsa Gumboo has been used in Tibetan medicine for centuries, boosting stamina, treating weakness and numbness, increasing virility. Mountain shamans would collect it in secret, sometimes under moonlight, chanting mantras as they pulled it from the soil. Only the wealthiest were allowed to consume it, and even then, only under supervision. Because it was too strong, too effective, and for courtesans, it was the ultimate weapon, not to ensnare clients, but to survive them. You remember a night long ago. In a borderland villa thick with incense and treachery, you'd shared a tea laced with a trace of Yatsa Gumboo before entertaining a general who thought power made him invincible. By the time dawn came, it was you who outlasted him, not the other way around. The fringe tale that Yatsa Gumboo, when taken by 2 people who share breath immediately after, links their life force for 3 nights, that if one sleeps, the other dreams, that if one desires, the other aches. Some say it's dangerous, others say it's divine. You've never tested it. Yet. Your client for tonight is a widow, unexpected, curious. She requested energy but not illusion, which is rare. Most want escape. She wants to arrive. So you make her a tea. Yatsa Gumboo, ginseng, dried plum, clove, stirred 7 times counterclockwise. You offer it with both hands, and she receives it with a slight bow. She drinks slowly, eyes closed, and you watch her pulse shift. Her fingers clench, her spine straightens, her breath deepens. Then she opens her eyes. There's no glaze, no dreamy detachment, just clarity. "I feel like myself again," she says. "You don't speak. There's nothing to say." After she leaves, you turn to the last piece of the fungus and crush it between your palms. It leaves behind a scent you can't describe, a little death, a little promise. You package the remainder for your companion. She tucks it into her robes, thanks you with a nod, and disappears into the mist. You don't ask what she's planning, you just know it will work, because caterpillar fungus doesn't flirt, it doesn't whisper, it commands, and some bodies don't need soft words, they need fire. The bathhouse is already crowded by the time you arrive, steam rolling out of the mosaic archways like incense made of breath and heat. Inside it smells of olive oil and cedar ash, spiced with gossip. Bare feet slap against wet tile, and laughter echoes off marble walls, but you're not here to socialise. You're here to collect something bottled, banned and traded only in whispers. You pass through the steam like a ghost, moving toward the back where the hot pools burn hotter and the men grow quieter. A servant girl meets your gaze and nods once, leading you behind a painted curtain into a small candle-lit alcove. There's a bench, a copper bowl, and, yes, an unmarked glass vial resting on a folded towel. Inside it, a thin, golden liquid. You know exactly what it is. Sweat of the gladiator. The bottle pulses faintly with warmth like it's still alive. You pop the cork and hold it to your nose, expecting something foul, but instead it's subtle, sharp, almost sweet, a little metallic, the scent of tension, of salt, of skin under duress. It's disgusting. It's perfect. See, in ancient Rome, certain courtesans and certain extremely bored noblewomen believed that a man's sweat, specifically the sweat of a victorious gladiator, held aphrodisiac properties. It wasn't about pheromones, not exactly. It was about the idea, the proximity to danger, power distilled into scent. You remember the texts, the ones scribbled in margins and nearly destroyed in church-controlled archives. Notes about how gladiators would be scraped down after fights, oil, dirt, blood and sweat, all collected into bowls, stirred, bottled and sold for a fortune. Nobles mixed it into perfumes, into love potions, even into food. One particularly daring courtesan in Pompeii is said to have used it in her bathwater, claiming it made her skin smell like victory. Of course it was banned. Anything associated with sex and violence always is, but it didn't stop the trade, especially not after that one senator publicly confessed to drinking it before visiting his favourite mistress, then passed out mid-Congress and had to be carried home. The fringe belief that the sweat of a champion gladiator contained a trace of divine energy, that by surviving death again and again, they earned a kind of magic, that whoever consumed it became briefly invincible in love, or madness. You uncork the vial again and let a single drop fall into your palm. It's warm, naturally, still alive with the energy of adrenaline, or belief, or both. You rub it behind your ears just to test it. The effect is immediate. Your skin feels more awake. Your breath deepens. You feel like you could throw a man through a wall, or take one apart with just a look. It's not the sweat itself, it's what it unlocks. You slip the vial into your sash and exit the alcove. On your way out, you pass one of the gladiators himself, half-dressed, scarred, gleaming with oil, laughing too loudly. You wonder if he knows what parts of him are being traded, bottled, worshipped. You wonder if he cares. Your client tonight is a scholar. Stiff robes, clean fingernails. He's never seen a real fight in his life, but he dreams of them nightly. He's read every battle epic, memorized the names of dead generals, but he's never touched danger. Until now. You don't greet him with pleasantries. You light a charcoal burner and sprinkle crushed sandalwood and myrrh over it, letting the smoke build. Then, without a word, you dab a drop of the gladiator's sweat on your wrist and press it to his nose. His reaction is instant. He gasps, blinks, and then leans forward, like he's following a scent he doesn't recognize but instinctively wants. His hands tremble slightly as he reaches for you, but you step back. Not yet. You pour him a cup of sweet wine laced with mint and ginger, and as he drinks, you see the change. He sits straighter. His voice deepens. He starts speaking with too much confidence, too much heat. The fantasy is working, he believes. That's all it takes. You move slowly around him, letting the scent trail in the air. Every turn, every shift of your hips, every breath, weaponized. This is not about seduction. This is about command, about what happens when someone thinks they're stronger than they are, and suddenly realizes you're the one holding the leash. He begs you quietly to sit closer, to touch him, to speak his name. You don't. You let the sweat speak for you, because that's the trick. Gladiator sweat isn't about scent, it's about projection. The person who smells it fills in the blanks, sees conquest, feels bloodlust, confuses lust with hunger, power with devotion. It's a mirror. And tonight, he's seeing everything he's too afraid to say out loud. You finally let him touch your hand. He sighs like he's come home. Later, he won't remember what he said, only how alive he felt. You'll remember everything. You cork the vial, clean the bowl, and rinse your hands in rosewater. You've only used a single drop, that's all it takes. You'll save the rest for someone who truly deserves it. Or someone foolish enough to believe they do. Because some aphrodisiacs don't seduce with sweetness. Some don't whisper at all. Some just smell like blood and survival. And people can't help but want more. The tide's been coming in slow all evening, lapping against the shore like a drowsy breath, rhythmic and insistent. You can hear it even from your high room above the city, a constant hush-hush that makes your pulse settle and your thoughts spread wide like wet ink on parchment. Nights like this aren't meant for performances, they're meant for spells, and tonight you've got just the right one in mind. You open a narrow wooden box tucked beneath your sleeping mat. Inside, thin green leaves folded in paper, a string of dried berries, and a sliver of pale amber resin sealed in wax. You unroll the paper first. The scent rises immediately, sharp, citrusy, just a little bitter. You crush the leaves in your fingers and breathe deep. Damiana, the aphrodisiac of the forgotten south, once sacred to the Maya, now hunted in border towns and outlawed in half a dozen provinces. Too many rumours, too many noble daughters who went into the gardens chaste and came out with eyes shining and skirts askew. You'd laugh if it weren't true, because you've used it and you know what it does. Damiana doesn't seduce, it dissolves restraint. You begin brewing the tea, you crush the leaves with your mortar, slowly, gently, so you don't release the bitterness all at once. You mix in the dried berries, tiny red globes that look innocent but bring heat, and just a sliver of the resin for body. Then you steep it in boiling water until the liquid runs a rich gold. The smell is divine. Not perfumed, not cloying, just earthy and bright, like summer rain on warm stone. You take one small sip, and wait. There it is, a tingling at the base of your spine, a ripple in your belly, like something ancient just stirred awoke. Damiana doesn't hit you like wine or opium. It's quieter, slower. It unfurls. You begin to notice everything, the grain of the wood beneath your fingers, the heat of your own breath. Every sensation becomes a little louder, a little deeper. And tonight's guest? Well, she's already waiting downstairs. You take the tray and descend quietly, the tea still steaming. Your movements loose now, unrushed. She's seated in the garden courtyard, one leg draped over the other, hair like ink, face hidden in the curve of her shoulder. A courtesan, like you. Or she was, once, before politics got messier than pleasure and she disappeared into a contract with a provincial lord. Now she's back, just for tonight. You offer her the cup. She accepts it without words. The air between you is already electric. No pretense, no performance. Just history and the soft hum of something left unfinished. She drinks, and something shifts in her posture. Subtle, but real. Her throat opens, her shoulders drop. You both lean back and listen to the tide for a while, letting the Damiana work its magic. Historically, Damiana was used not just as an aphrodisiac, but as a heart medicine, a spirit tonic. Mayan priestesses would drink it before rituals designed to link the physical and emotional worlds. It wasn't about lust, it was about presence, sensitivity, connection, and maybe that's what makes it so dangerous. Because people fear what makes them feel. In certain territories, Damiana was banned for its effects on the moral clarity of women. It was said to inspire wayward thought, which, loosely translated, meant it made them want more than they were told they deserved. You smile at the thought, the fringe law, that two people who drink Damiana together will share an unspoken truth before the night ends. It won't be planned, it won't be gentle, but it will be real, and the tea is almost gone. Your companion sets her cup down. Her eyes are glassy, not from intoxication, but from clarity. I left because I was afraid, she says. Of how much I loved this life. You nod. Of how much it loved you back. She leans forward. Her hand finds yours, cool fingers curling around your palm. It doesn't have to be over, she whispers. And you believe her, because Damiana doesn't lie. It just removes the filter. It lets the words come without armour. You sit together in the courtyard for a long time, your shoulders brushing, hands linked loosely, eyes not looking away. No plans, no promises, just honesty in its most seductive form. Eventually the tide rises high enough to spill onto the garden steps. You both laugh. It's absurd. Perfect. Holy. She leaves before dawn, wrapped in your shawl, the scent of Damiana still clinging to her wrists. You don't watch her go, you don't need to, because some aphrodisiacs aren't about touch, some are about truth, and some truths only rise when the tide does. The last light of the evening is pink and watery, bleeding through the slats of your shutters like a sigh. The day has been too quiet. The streets below feel empty in a way that's not peaceful, just expectant. You light a single lamp, not because you need it, but because you don't like what the dark might tell you tonight. Something's coming. You feel it in your teeth. You take out the last of the forbidden stash. A box of marble-inlaid wood, kept sealed for months. Inside, a velvet pouch containing tiny wax-wrapped cones, no bigger than a fingertip. You unfold one with reverence and just a bit of unease, because this one isn't like the others. Cantharides, known to the ancients as Spanish fly, and it's banned everywhere, not just in law but in ethics. The powdered shells of the Litter vesicatoria beetle, iridescent green things that shimmer like emeralds but deliver blistering poison in every flake. This is not an herb, not a scent, not a syrup to be sipped slowly by moonlight. This is the thing that once seduced emperors into madness, and in more than one case death. You scrape just a hint of the powder into a cup, less than a fingernail's worth. Mix it with milk and saffron, then strain it through linen to capture any lingering grit. Even now your hands move carefully. You're not just brewing a stimulant, you're wielding a blade. Tonight's request came from someone bold, a name that makes couriers whisper, a man who's never been denied anything in his entire life and knows it. But this, he sent in a coded message, folded in lotus paper and sealed with red wax. One word inside, rapture. He thinks it's a game. You set the cup on a tray lined with jasmine petals and make your way to the reception chamber, moving soberly. It's important to maintain the illusion of control, especially when you're about to let go of all of it. He's already seated, reclining like a king in exile, robes loose, eyes gleaming with something too close to hunger. You say nothing. You offer the cup. He drinks in one pull, then waits. Cantharides doesn't start with pleasure. It starts with heat. A slow burn low in the belly that spreads with maddening patience. It doesn't intoxicate. It inflames. The pulse speeds up. Breath becomes short. The body begins to flush with sensation, hypersensitive to every whisper, every brush of fabric. It mimics desire so closely that the line between real and induced blurs. And then, it doesn't stop. There's a reason it was banned. In ancient Rome, wealthy patrons used cantharides to inspire insatiable lust. The beetle powder was baked into honey cakes, slipped into wine, hidden in perfume. It was rumoured that the infamous Empress Messalina used it to keep her lovers interested. Some say she overdosed her last one, or that he overdosed himself trying to keep up. You watch him now, this client of yours, as the effect kicks in. His jaw clenches, his eyes flicker, his hands twitch in his lap like he's resisting the urge to do something, but he doesn't know what, because that's the trap of cantharides. It awakens the body beyond what the mind is ready for. The fringe belief? That when administered in microscopic doses by a trained courtesan, not a poisoner, not an amateur, it can tear away the last layers of pretense between partners. That it forces truth to the surface through the that it opens the soul through urgency. You lean in slowly, brushing your fingers near, but not on, his skin. The air between you crackles. He gasps, barely keeping still, his lips part. You're trembling, you murmur. He tries to laugh, fails. I thought it would be smoother. No, you say, you thought you'd be in control. His breath hitches, but you're not cruel. You bring a bowl of chilled mint water to his lips, help him sip, slow the rising fire. The edge softens just enough for him to remain conscious, present, still burning but not lost. He looks at you now with something different in his eyes. Not lust, awe. Later, when the heat ebbs and the sweat cools on his skin, he asks you, not with command, but with genuine wonder, "Why do you still do this?" You think about it. About all the bottles, the leaves, the tinctures hidden in shadow, about the syrups that seduce and the roots that reveal, about how many people have mistaken your work for performance when it's always been something more. You smile, because most people don't know how to feel. I just remind them. He nods slowly. You do. He doesn't leave immediately. He sits with you for a while, the silence not awkward but complete, and when he finally stands, he bows. Not like a man in power, like a student. You return to your chamber and carefully reseal the pouch of cantharides, knowing you'll likely never use it again. Not because it isn't effective, but because too much truth all at once can break a person. And you're a breaker. But only when invited. Some Aphrodisiacs seduce, some unveil, some inflame. But this one burns, and in its ashes, something holy remains. So, here we are. 30 nights, 30 rooms, 30 stories steeped in shadow and smoke and soft ruin. You made it through, well, sort of. If you've been paying attention, you already know. You probably wouldn't survive even one of these nights in real life. Not with your set soul intact, and definitely not with your dignity. But that's the thing about aphrodisiacs, isn't it? They're not really about love, not even about lust. If we're being honest, they're about possibility. About that moment when the body and the mind loosen just enough to imagine more, for better or worse. A drop of oil, a bitter leaf, a sip of something forbidden. And suddenly the rules start to feel optional. The mask slips, the heart opens, the beast stirs. Maybe it's about control, or surrender. Or maybe it's just about remembering that you're alive. You've walked through royal chambers and roadside taverns, smuggled powders past guards, kissed lips stained with saffron and wine, and sipped things that should have left you breathless, some that almost did. You've tasted history's dirty secrets, the kind that don't make it into textbooks but cling to silk sheets and closed doors and the backs of wrists. And in every whispered legend, every outlawed recipe, you've seen the same truth again and again. Desire breaks laws. It doesn't ask permission, it doesn't wait for the right moment. And it sure as hell doesn't care what's banned. Whether it's the musk of a deer, the milk of the moon, or the sweat of a dying man. History's courtesans knew that a well-placed scepter or a forbidden sip could change the course of everything, from a single night to an entire empire. So if you're lying there now, wondering what this means for you, no, I'm not going to tell you to go out and forage for mandrake root or try to get your hands on powdered ambergris. I'm just going to remind you, intention is the strongest aphrodisiac of all. What you wear, what you say, what you withhold, that it's not the potion, it's the way you pour it. Now breathe in deep, exhale slower. Let your body soften into the mattress, the pillow, the night. You've travelled far, smelled too much, felt things you maybe weren't ready for, but you're safe now and maybe just a little wiser. Or wicked, hopefully both.